We are there. All right.
Hey, Dale.
Yeah. Ready?
Oh, John, you come over here. Ready to start.
One. It is nice to be with you. Thank you for those that have come to address the committee, and thank you for others that have come to participate and help us in this very meaningful endeavor. I want to welcome the presenters, committee members, and certainly members of the public that are here. I'm John F. Kennedy. I serve in the Georgia Senate representing the 18th District and have the pleasure and honor of really in this capacity as serving as chairman of the Senate Study Committee of Combating Chronic Absenteeism. Today's hearing and meeting is really significant for many reasons. One is that it's not often that the Senate and House sit down together in the way that we're doing right now. And it underscores, I would tell you, how serious this issue is and how much stronger we are when we work together. I'm going to pitch it now to my good friend, Chairman Irwin, and thank him for what he has meant to me in looking at this issue. When I presented this bill to his committee, Senate Bill 123 that was ultimately passed, he not only was helpful, but very quickly became very passionate about trying to address this. And when you take passion and you marry that with the kind of professional experience and life experience he has on this, I sincerely value his opinions and approach to this. So, Chairman Irwin, if you would introduce yourself and committee members, and then I will pitch it back and have our Senate members introduce themselves.
Great. Thank you, Senator. And likewise here, I'm blessed to work with somebody who cares about the children in this state and want to make a difference. And I've seen that in his career here at the Capitol, as well as the bills that he's passing forward and that have come through my committee. We always like to begin by pointing out the educators in the room. If you have been or are a teacher or an educator, hold your hand up for a minute. Now, I want to recognize the educators. Thank you. I like to state this, that teachers, administrators, you are a daily hero to so many. I had a lot of daily heroes in my career, and as a student as well as a teacher myself around me. So thank you for what you do in the effort. This is a very worthy topic that can make a difference in lives of young people all the way up through their adult life. So we do take this study committee very seriously. We are finding out a lot of very good information. We also have a very full schedule of very good information, I believe, to hear. And the House members that we have here, I want to introduce Vice Chair Ms. Carmen. Thank you for being here. Appreciate what you do as Vice Chair, Mr. Matt. Chairman of Appropriations, Matt Duke, thank you for being here. Ms. Sandy, thank you for being here as the representative from her district, and Lydia Glaze, I believe there you go, Representative Glaze, thank you for being here. And the efforts that they have. What you don't see, members out there, is the efforts that these people do behind the scenes, whether it's communicating in their local district or with me, or with this committee as a whole, trying to solve this problem of chronic absenteeism. So we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to ask my Senate members to introduce themselves, and then I'll make a few opening comments, and we'll get right on to our witnesses.
Well, thank you. Well, thank y'all. It's great to be here today and excited to be here. As many of y'all were with us earlier, we kicked off Georgia Reeves Day with Malcolm Mitchell over at the College Football Hall of Fame, and what a great event that was, and to see all those young children, students who wanted to read. And of course, they were in school today. One of the reasons we're here today is because there's a lot of kids are not in school today. So I'm Billy Hickman, Senate District, 4 from, Statesboro, Georgia. And I'm Chairman of Education in the Senate and Chairman of Appropriations for K-12 and higher education. Thank y'all for being here.
Hey, y'all. I'm State Senator Sean Still from North Metro, North Fulton, South Forsyth, Northwest Gwinnett. Serve on a lot of committees. Know a lot of y'all here in the audience. Appreciate y'all being here. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, Senators. Appreciate that. I'm going to make a few opening comments and then we'll get
Pretty simple.
Senator Sims. I'm sorry. Did not see you over there. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Georgia. I represent 13 counties in Southwest Georgia, most very rural and very poor. So much for hopefully community.
Ma'am. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. You know, for many of us, chronic absenteeism was not something that we fully understood until recently. I certainly fall into that category. Quite frankly, I didn't know what it was, to be honest. And I'll never forget last summer when, as some of you have heard me tell the story, I picked up a newspaper in another state and it was front and center of the problem in the other state. Came home and asked my staff, do we have a problem with chronic absenteeism in Georgia? And the answer was not yes, but absolutely yes. And it's shocking, some of the numbers, and those will be discussed later on. But I suspect many of you in this room know how serious this issue is. Of course, chronic absenteeism is being defined by students in the public school system missing 10% or more of their school days that's needed for the school year. It's not just an educational issue, it's an economic issue, it's a workforce issue. It is the future of the children that are in our public school systems issue. And the challenge is that it doesn't just affect the children, does it? It affects their families, it affects communities, and quite frankly, it affects the entire state of Georgia. That's why during the past legislative session, with the help of many others, including my friend Chairman Irwin here, we passed Senate Bill 123, and it really empowers local attendance review teams to identify challenges, share data, and propose community-based solutions that are tailored for the students' needs. We also passed Senate Resolution 217, which for the Senate side brings us here. This is the second of our Senate meetings pursuant to the Senate Study Committee. And during our first meeting, we heard from Attendance Works, a national nonprofit leading this work across the country. We heard from CSG South, who shared regional data and solutions. We heard from some other witnesses that Dr. McGilvany, who presented findings from the Student Attendance Subcommittee. We heard from Justin Hill about the statewide perspective, and we also heard from Dr. Dan Sims, who's the superintendent of Macon Bibb Schools. That meeting gave us a very strong foundation to help define what the problem is and give us a better understanding. So today, our work continues and we move things forward. We're going to hear about the barriers students face, the policies shaping attendance, and the solutions that communities and organizations are building. We're going to hear from several folks. And rather than take the time to tell you who we're going to hear from, we'll just allow them to introduce themselves when they come. They come. First is, yes, Judge Ann Harris. Judge Harris, thank you for being here. I know you professionally as a judge. Thank you for bringing your servant's heart here and the expertise that you bring from your life experience, and also serving your constituents as a Superior Court judge. And thanks for being here with us today.
Let's see.
Yep, just trying to get to mine. There we go. Get it off of, there we go. Screen. That's what I'm trying to get to.
So if you would prefer to sit where you could see the screen better, remember you have this in your notebook in front of you too.
There we go. I'm a judge. I'm not a technical expert. Good afternoon. Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Kennedy, Chairman Irwin,
ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you all for the opportunity to come and speak with all of you. I am a Superior Court judge in Cobb County. I have the distinct honor and sometimes the pleasure of being the chief judge in Cobb County. This is probably one of the most important topics I've been able to speak on. It's of great importance to all Georgians, but especially our children. I will tell you, as a Superior Court judge, I feel a little bit out of place being here. We don't see teens in Superior Court very often. And when we do, it's usually because they are accused of a very serious crime and they are already down a very bad road. And when I see them on the occasions when I do, frankly, I want to step off the bench and say, how did you get here? When I think about the meaning behind the phrase of the canary in the coal mine, I can tell you a young person being in Superior Court, that's really not the canary. That's more like the coal mine that has exploded. And as we all know intuitively, and I'm going to share with you just some of the hard data and take just a minute to remind us of why we're here. Certainly the argument can be made very effectively that dropping out of school is the canary in the coal mine. It's a harbinger of bad outcomes for our children. So Chairman Kennedy mentioned what we all know instinctively, and if you heard this in a prior session, I apologize for being repetitive, but I think it's important that we remind ourselves of just how serious our challenge is. Nationally, more than 4,000 students drop out of school every day. Every day. High school dropouts are almost 3 times more likely to be unemployed than college graduates. Even when employed, high school dropouts earn on average $8,000 less, not $8,000 less than college graduates, $8,000 less annually than those who have completed high school. High school dropouts, as we all know, they're more likely to live in poverty. They have worse health outcomes, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, lung disease. They are more likely to suffer bad health outcomes. On average, the life expectancy of someone who has dropped out of high school is 8 years less than someone who completed high school. That's a staggering statistic. And there's an economic impact to it. In 2019, there was a study done, and at that time, and this was pre-COVID, they said the dropouts from the class of 2019 alone will cost the nation more than $337 billion, billion with a B, in lost wages. As we know, at the local level, at the state and federal level, the dropouts generate significantly less tax revenue, and they are much more likely to be consumers of taxpayer-funded resources, welfare, food stamps, Medicaid. And as a Superior Court judge, here are some of the most distressing facts for me. High school dropouts are 3.5 times more likely to be arrested in their lifetime than those who complete high school. 70% of Georgia's state prison inmates, 70%, did not complete high school. Of the folks in Georgia that have their GED, half of them earned it where? In prison. Which says great things about our prison program and what they're trying to do to educate our youngsters, but that half of the folks who earn their GED did so in prison. That's a sad fact. And, when you set aside the family and the community and the cultural impact and the economic impact, remember this, in Georgia, and this is a couple of years old, but we spend about $10,000 a year educating a child. We spend about $30,000 a year incarcerating an inmate. But, the question of the canary in the coal mine, is it really dropping out? I think what we've learned is that dropping out is just more of the coal mine problem. And what the real canary in the coal mine is chronic absenteeism. And that's what these local committees that are mandated by statute. That's what our committees and our protocols are about. So the Federal Reserve Bank in Richmond did a study they wrote a paper a few years ago, and they pulled in a study. It was a longitudinal study done by the Department of Education. Why do kids drop out? This is reported from the kids. Why do they drop out? They miss too many school days. That's chronic absenteeism. And if you look at the other reasons why they dropped out, so many of them is just a litany of challenges. And it's almost like which came first, the chicken or the egg, bad grades. They didn't like school. They didn't get along with their teachers. They couldn't keep up with the work. All of these things are tied to, they're either the fruit of or the cause of that chronic absenteeism. And then you've got the family and the community issues that we can't ignore. They got a job. For the women, they got pregnant. They had to support their family. And we all know when we talk about high school kids having to support their family, sometimes it means they're out working. Sometimes in a lot of families, it means they're home looking after the 3 and the 4-year-old children because the parents have to work and they can't afford daycare. And so the 10th grader is not in school because he's having to look after his small children. I did find it funny that they said it's easier to get a GED. I have to say, I think that's some really seriously misinformed children, but they are finding that out after they drop out, of course. But the fact is, chronic absenteeism is at the heart of the dropout problem. We know that statistically, and the children are telling us that. I know, and y'all know that we've had laws on the books for years that require attendance and provide corrective measures. But what I think perhaps we have needed is what this committee and what the local committees in particular are doing. And that's a grassroots effort at the local level that involves all the stakeholders, not just the schools, but the children, the parents, law enforcement, the court system, mental health professionals, public health officials. It's a problem that, everybody throws around the term wraparound services, which I know y'all have all heard that. And it's almost like the word transparency. It's like if I hear transparency one more time, I think my head's going to explode. But it is that wraparound care that is needed to devote to this problem. These committees and the protocols that we've been working on, they identify the specific problems that underpin chronic absenteeism and come up with strategies to address the problems, whether it involves the children's behavior, whether it involves their learning difficulties, parental involvement, school climate, that can't be ignored. And a lot of times it's all the above. So in Cobb County, we developed, and I do need to stop here. When I say we, there's no we in this. I can tell you as a Superior Court judge, all I did was gather together some very accomplished people who are much closer to the problem and say, you go. One of those people was Juvenile Court Judge Wayne Granis. He's here today, just done an incredible amount of heavy lifting. He and our Juvenile Court Administrator, Adolphus Graves, and an incredibly dedicated staff attorney, Jill Roth. Under their leadership, they brought together stakeholders from all across Cobb County. And Cobb County is a big place. There's a lot of school districts. There's a lot of mental health providers. There's a lot of, and I don't discount that Cobb County is very fortunate and very blessed. We have resources that I know can be hard to find in other parts of the state. And that's one of the challenges is coming up with protocols that can work. That's why it's important that it be at the local level, because what works in Cobb may not work for everybody. The needs in Southwest Georgia are probably a little different than the needs in Cobb. But we developed these protocols that are aimed at fostering school attendance and engagement. We launched our committee on January the 29th of this year officially. We had a formal protocol signing. We had 38 signees and all but 4 of them that were there. That's what happens when you get a memo from a Superior Court judge that says, be here, please. But in all seriousness, I recognize that while Superior Court judges are certainly not the subject matter experts, we perhaps have the bandwidth and the capability to really get everybody sitting down at the table, because it's a lot of stakeholders that all have to be at the table at the same time, not just schools talking about this and then they go hand it off to law enforcement or the social workers. They've all got to be at the table at the same time. Just for those of you who may be wondering, as of midsummer, this was as of about the 4th of July, 16 of the judicial circuits around the state had developed some level of protocols. I haven't seen them all. I don't know what they look like, although a lot have called Cobb County and said, hey, can we have a copy of yours? So they may look like ours. And that covers, I believe, about 37 counties. So, and the deadline for establishing these protocols, I believe, is June of next year. Is that right, Wayne? Yes, is June of next year. So we're pushing this forward. We're doing our best. So what did we learn from our process of developing the protocols? And let me tell you, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but the protocols, they have some real meat to them. It's not just a feel good, hey, we're going to do this. It's got specific names and specific functions and specific responsibilities in there. So what did we learn from our process? Well, we learned that the signers to the protocol, in other words, the ones that will have the proverbial boots up people's you-know-whats to make them do things, you need to have some authoritative positions from each of your stakeholders, somebody that can kind of put the pedal to the metal and be listened to. We also figured out real quick, you need to figure out among your stakeholders who your key staff folks are. And when I say key staff holders, I'm talking about, when I say subject matter experts, I don't necessarily mean people who have studied the problem. I mean the folks who are down in the trenches. Okay. You got to have the social workers that are or the school counselors that are in there doing the work every day that can say, here's what I see. Here's what I'm experiencing with my children, with my parents, day in and day out. They need to be involved. You need to, where it says staff members responsible for coordinating development and leveraging the assistance of your judges. I'm not kidding anybody. I know that we can provide some authority and some impetus to move things along, and it's important. And then the last little bullet point, that the takeaway was, we constantly keep in mind what our focus is. Presence in school equals graduation, equals healthy, productive, contributing adults. I mean, it is a direct line. And when you don't have that presence, when you've got that chronic absenteeism, you're never going to get to that final goal. So just to tell you, and we've shared our protocol with a number of other circuits, but our protocol, of course, it has organizing principles and leadership and administrative matters. We've got each stakeholder organization identified by name, and we've got the person, the stakeholder there that is on the hook for results. We have why they're there. We've got included in it, the methods that we go about, the methods that we use to go about reviewing policies about tardiness and climate issues, and identify specific data points that we need. Some schools are better than others. I'm sure those of you who live in areas with large school districts, you're going to have some schools that capture data. And then, in fact, I was just talking about it before we got started. You're going to have some schools where they go, yeah, we don't really track that. And, the fact that you would have a school that would say, yeah, we don't really track that. It's not the time for finger pointing, but it's the time to say, well, we're going to start tracking it, and you're going to start next week. We've got the attendant. For us, we have an attendance protocol that includes intervention strategies that are school and community based, because the hope is, let's get to these kids before they end up entangled in the juvenile court system. There are things that juvenile court can do and can do very well, but let's also see if there's things that we can push back at the school level before parents and their children are sitting in juvenile court. We've got a 5-day truancy notification process. We've got a progressive discipline plan in place that's pre-court. And all of those are just those are part of the protocol. And it just kind of descends in order from how can you deal with it internally to when do you have to get law enforcement? When do you need to get the court involved? When the court gets involved, what does that look like? You know, children in need of services, protective orders, dependency cases, things like that. So we had our first meeting in January. That was kind of our organizational meeting. Since then, and I'm going to talk about the two subcommittees in a minute. We had a July meeting with a legislative update. We actually got our first stream of data from the Cobb County School District. We started studying, actually we didn't start, we got a report on the functions and the duties of the school social workers. Because those school social workers, I mean, they're kind of the boots on the ground a lot of time for identifying and surfacing, you know, here's what's underneath the chronic absenteeism. We applied for a grant fund to assist with a project. I'm going to talk about it in just a minute. Applied for a grant. So our two committees. I don't know if that's the name of the committee or not. I know the committee names are kind of long, as are a lot of committee names in this, but I will tell you, we've got it divided into two parts. A subcommittee to identify and address the barriers themselves related to school attendance and the school climate. And then we've got a different subcommittee that's focused on compiling a list of what resources are out there and where are there gaps in our resources. Because again, so work in the past, for a variety of reasons, and nobody's at fault, but work in the past has been kind of fractured, and the people over here didn't know what was available over here and didn't know what this group out here had been doing. So we're trying to just again take a coordinated, holistic, sorry, another word I hate, but it's appropriate here, holistic approach to the problem. And so here's what's on our horizon. The first thing is figure out what are those schools that are hitting that 15% threshold. You know, 15% of their student body is, what's the phrase I'm looking? Their absences are unexcused for more than 10 days in an academic year. And 10 days, you may say, well, is that really so much? That's 2 solid weeks of unexcused absences. And, you know, when you're out that much, it makes learning hard. It ripples into all those other problems. Like, I don't like my teachers. I can't keep up with the work. I'll never complete the requirements to graduate. So we got to look at those schools. We're trying to figure out how to integrate students and parents into these committees, because they're the ones that can tell us a lot about what their experiences are and get us to some of the unvarnished truths. In fact, I was talking with Judge Granis on the way down here, and I asked him, I said, do we have, with the parents, do we have a parent apathy issue or a parent exhaustion issue? He said, you'd be surprised, in a lot of cases, you have a parent ignorance issue. The parents don't even know that their kids are not in school until they get a notice. They'll get a communication from a teacher saying, you're asking for me to switch your child from this teacher to that teacher, but your child hasn't even been in that class for 3 weeks. And the parents don't know that. So we got to get the students and the parents integrated into these committees. You know, we need to have a work plan so that we can stay on top of the legislation as it changes and as we find new and better ways to do things and it gets put into legislation. We need to make sure that our work is staying consistent with what this committee has told us to do. We've established what's called Project Pivot, which goes back to when I said we had applied for a grant. It's a community-based multi-agent risk reduction panel that is going to address the juvenile court staff, social services, parents and community agencies, and engage them in an effort to try to get a handle on not only the problem, but get a handle on the solutions, because it's going to be a multi-pronged solution. So that concludes my prepared remarks. if it's appropriate, I'm happy to entertain questions, although full disclosure, I can assure you Judge Grannis is going to be much more knowledgeable, than I am. And if not, thank you for the opportunity to present, because this is a persistent and pressing problem. And I thank y'all for what you've told us to do, which is a grassroots, holistic effort, data-driven, to deal with chronic absenteeism. Thank y'all for that. So,
Thank you, Judge. If you'll wait just a minute, we've got just a couple of minutes. Do we have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. This was well done. I'm very excited about the things that you're doing in Cobb County. I have a two-part question. One is when these adjustments were made, do you know if the Cobb County handbook was updated to give parents awareness of these changes?
Judge Grannis, I promise y'all,
Okay, I'm not trying to jump
No,
ahead.
no, no. Will you permit him to answer the question?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
he's got the
Yeah,
knowledge.
so I was just curious if that handbook was updated, and then is there a source when you talked about the 5-day truancy and then moving that to the disciplinary actions that, you know, we want to try to avoid, but if necessary, are implemented, are those documented, what those steps are?
I would say that the schools did update their handbooks because all of the protocols were done in coordination with the schools. It was not done outside of the schools. The schools have been involved. We've been actually been developing this protocol since 2021, and really working hard to get all the agencies together. And so yes, the handbooks were updated. And additionally, as far as, and your second question was the 5-day, what was your question around that?
So my question was, she marked the 5 days, and then after that was the disciplinary, kind of a tiered disciplinary. Are there steps that how that's implemented, it's laid out to let parents know?
Absolutely. It's in the protocol itself, and the protocols were taken back to the schools signed off on this. So the protocols were not developed outside, like I said, outside of the schools. So the schools were mandated to inform the parents of that information. Yes.
Thank you very much. And so I would understand that you're with collaboration with the school, but I'm very interested in how the parents gain the knowledge of the changes made. And so educating them on those changes as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one more thing. We are working directly with the schools and parents, kids, et cetera, as Judge Harris indicated, to try to provide more information for the parents to know exactly what's happening.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Senator.
Judge Harris.
Sheriff, thank you so much for addressing it. One of the things that I see as I tour these schools is, and you hit on it, climate in schools. And I think the climate in schools kind of go back to, supportive teachers. And I really believe that as the climate in the school increases, more and more students will want to come to school. So we need to find ways to support our teachers. We need to find ways to mentor our teachers to provide that. And I think the whole climate in schools will change. Thank you.
For young teachers, because I know, teachers don't do it so long. I mean, they get ready to retire like everybody else. Some of them, they get a little burned out. And so, but I think when we're bringing in younger teachers, when they're coming in fresh out of college, it's a lot to expect them to cope with now, because I get old. I mean, the schools are, I think that respect that students have for teachers, and I think a lot of that has been lost. I think COVID was very harmful in that respect. But I agree, particularly with our younger teachers. I think they definitely need some mentoring to try to help them cope with the brave new world we seem to be in the last year or so.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And thank you again.
Good job. And I think that's all the questions. Judge, thank you for that presentation, both of you. I'm going to pitch it to my colleague. We're going to alternate in calling witnesses, and I think he's going to, I think, remind folks something I failed to do, which was we're going to try to keep your presentation to 15 minutes. As a practicing lawyer, there was no way I was going to tell Judge Harris that she was over time. Even if she went here 3 hours, I was not going to do that. I know better than to do that. But if y'all could think about that going forward. Chairman.
There you go. Thank you, Chairman. Chief Judge Harris, thank you. Thank you for the information, and please be willing to allow us to continue to communicate with you as we develop more questions too, and we need your expertise and your background there. Thank you. Let's move on here in the agenda, and as Chairman said, let's try to stick it to 15 minutes if we can. MJ Kim, are you going to come up? And Fran, I saw you. Dundor, where are you in the room? Hold your hand up with GOSA Director. Congratulations on your new appointment. Your service is valued. So thank you for allowing MJ to come here. Explain a little bit about your grant, what you're doing, and the information you got, if you could begin, MJ. I got you. There we go.
Thank you for inviting the Governor's Office of Student Achievement to share what we know about chronic absenteeism in Georgia. My name is Dr. MJ Kim, and I serve as the Director of Policy, Research, and Evaluation at GOSA. Currently at GOSA, we have a grant funding that we're working with a couple of universities to look into chronic absenteeism in relationship to some of the student outcomes of our state. Today, I will focus on data-driven insights, specifically how chronic absenteeism affects student outcomes and what that means for Georgia's schools, families, and workforce readiness. The data that I will share with you today will help illuminate the progress Georgia has made, the challenges we still face, and some of the opportunities ahead. Before I begin, I would like to recognize my colleagues, Dr. Monica Flemini and Dr. Shuyang Wang, whose dedication made this work possible. Start by looking at chronic absenteeism from national perspective. Now, a quick note before we dive into the numbers: the 2020 and 2021 attendance data are a little messy because of COVID-19 reporting interruptions. In other words, those 2 years are kind of like a group project where not everyone turned in their part. So it's tough to make sense of the final product. For this reason, we use 2018 and 19 as pre-pandemic data and 2022 onward as post-pandemic data. Looking at the pre-pandemic years, chronic absenteeism was fairly stable, 15.2% in 2018 and 15.1% in 2019. That gives us a solid baseline of what normal looked like. But in 2022, the rate jumped to 28.5%, nearly doubling. That's not just a small increase. That's a flashing red warning sign of how much the pandemic disrupted student attendance. Since then, we've seen some improvement. Rates dropped to 25.4% in 2023 and further down to 23.5% in 2024. While that's a progress, these numbers are still far above pre-pandemic numbers, showing us that schools and communities are still grappling with the issue. Here, we're looking at a bar graph that shows the absolute percentage point change in chronic absenteeism across the southern states. And the first takeaway is pretty clear. Every single state saw at least a 6-point increase. In other words, this wasn't just Georgia's issue. It was a region-wide challenge. You could say absenteeism spread across the South faster than sweet tea at a summer picnic. Now, Georgia's rate increased by 9.9 percentage points. That's a significant jump, though not the highest. We weren't leading the pack necessarily, but we were certainly running with it. So this slide reminds us that Georgia is part of a bigger regional story, and we have both challenges and potential solutions we can look to from our neighbors. Zoom in on the case of Georgia. Before the pandemic, chronic absenteeism here was remarkably steady, 13.1% in 2018 and 13.0% in 2019. That stability gave us a clear picture, again, what the normal used to look like. But then came 2022, and the numbers all tell a very different story. Chronic absenteeism nearly doubled, jumping to 24.4%. Since then, we've seen gradual improvement, but it's also very slow, and we're still far above where we were just a few years ago. And as we saw earlier in the national and regional data, Georgia's trajectory closely mirrors broader trends. Moving forward, we are going to take a step further and not only rely on the averages of the whole group, but look into details. My son plays baseball, and it's just like how the batting average doesn't tell you much whether a player delivered the 9th inning with the game on the line. That's what average is like. So now let's take a closer look at chronic absenteeism by race. What we see here is that Black and Hispanic students experience higher rates of chronic absenteeism compared to their white and Asian peers. And while every group saw a spike after the pandemic, the increase was steepest for Black and Hispanic students. In other words, the gaps that already existed before the pandemic didn't hold steady, they widened. This is an important reminder that the pandemic didn't create these disparities, but it certainly exacerbated. This table tells us to understand the same story from different angle. Here's the part I'd like you to notice: the difference between absolute levels and growth rates. The line graph that I just shared with you tells you that Black students consistently have the highest absenteeism rates, followed by Hispanic, white, and then Asian students at the lowest levels. But this table tells us something new. The rate of increase for Asian students from 2018 to 2022 was almost 94%, nearly as steep as the increase for Black and Hispanic students. Because their baseline was much lower, that jump might not look alarming at first glance, but it signals a rapidly emerging concern. So while Asian students still make up a smaller share of chronically absent students, overall, chronic absenteeism is spreading much more quickly in this group compared to the past. In short, groups with already high absenteeism, like Black and Hispanic students, expanded their lead, while groups that historically had lower absenteeism, like Asian students, are now seeing the sharpest proportional worsening. This divergence means our strategies have to do two things at once: reduce the heavy burden on groups with the highest rates, and then while also paying attention to groups where absenteeism is accelerating the fastest. Think of it like fighting two fires, one that's already burning hot and another that's spreading quickly. Both need our attention, but for different reasons. This next graph looks at chronic absenteeism by gender. Both male and female students saw absenteeism surge after the pandemic, and their trends are almost identical. The gap between the two is minimal. In other words, neither group shows unique vulnerability or extra resilience compared to the other. This table shows that rates rose sharply during the pandemic, and while there have been some improvements since then, the gap has only partially closed. The difference between male and female students is consistent, but relatively small. It's an interesting pattern that may warrant further research, but at this point, in my opinion, it isn't large enough to justify gender-specific policy interventions. This graph looks at chronic absenteeism by economic status. Here, ED refers to economically disadvantaged students, those who qualify for free or reduced price meals. What we see here is consistent pattern. Economically disadvantaged students have higher absenteeism rates than their non-economically disadvantaged students. And after the pandemic, the gap didn't just widen, it stretched significantly, and it's still with us today. This table highlights that economically disadvantaged students experience 14.1 percentage point increase compared to 9.8 percentage points for non-economically disadvantaged students. This shows that economically disadvantaged students were far more vulnerable to attendance disruptions. However, if we look at proportional growth, non-economically disadvantaged students' absenteeism actually increased by 122.5%, which is higher than the 89.2% increase for economically disadvantaged students, simply because non-economically disadvantaged students started from a much lower baseline. In other words, non-economically disadvantaged students saw sharper proportional growth, but economically disadvantaged students continue to bear the heavier burden. This graph looks at chronic absenteeism among students with and without disabilities. Here, SWD stands for Students with Disabilities, students who have been assigned a state-required code for a specific exceptionality or disability. SWOD refers to students without disabilities. What the data shows is consistent. Students with disabilities have higher absenteeism rate than their peers without disabilities, both before and after the pandemic. The pandemic only amplified the disparities. As we've seen in the line graph earlier, both groups experienced a sharp increase. But if we look at proportional growth, the pandemic increased absenteeism sharply for all students with nearly equal absolute changes, but a bigger relative jump for students without disabilities. All in all, regardless of race, gender, economic, and disabilities status, the takeaway is pretty clear. Chronic absenteeism expanded to affect broad swaths of our students, not only those already at higher risk. Let's talk about the academic performance. And here's a simple way to think about this. Missing school is like skipping steps when building a house. Missing too many steps, your house foundation is going to wobble. This scatter plot shows exactly that effect. There's a strong negative correlation between schools' rates of chronic absenteeism and their English language arts, or ELA, proficiency rates for the academic year of 2023 and 24. As the percentage of chronically absent students rises, ELA proficiency declines sharply. The red trend line makes this inverse relationship pretty clear. Higher absenteeism is consistently associated with lower student achievement. You'll also notice that most schools cluster along this trend, reinforcing that this isn't just about few outliers, it's a widespread pattern. This bar graph shows how ELA proficiency declines as chronic absenteeism increases, and it does so across all racial groups. The starting levels and the magnitude of the drop, however, differ significantly. Across the board, as chronic absenteeism increases, ELA proficiency drops sharply. No group is immune. But the impact is most severe for Black and Hispanic students, highlighting how absenteeism can exacerbate existing disparities in academic performance. Let's look at how economic status and disability status influence ELA proficiency. On the left, the bar graph shows proficiency scores for economically disadvantaged students and non-economically disadvantaged students. Across every absenteeism quartile, non-economically disadvantaged students consistently outperform their economically disadvantaged peers. On the right, the bar graph shows ELA proficiency for students with disabilities and students without disabilities. Here we see that proficiency declines as absenteeism rises for both groups. However, students with disabilities consistently have substantially lower proficiency across all quartiles. Let's turn our attention to math proficiency, and just like ELA, missing school has a real impact. This scatter plot yet again shows a strong negative correlation between chronic absenteeism and math proficiency rates for the academic year of 2023 and 24. As the percentage of chronically absent students rises, the percentage of students proficient in math falls. The red trend line makes this relationship clear, and you'll also notice substantial clustering, which shows the most schools follow this negative pattern rather than being outliers. The takeaway, again, is straightforward. Chronic absenteeism affects math outcomes just as strongly as ELA. The bar graph demonstrates that math proficiency drops consistently as chronic absenteeism increases, and the substantial achievement gaps persist across racial groups at every level of absenteeism. Asian and white students consistently outperform Hispanic and Black students, indicating persistent racial achievement gaps. Reducing absenteeism is likely to benefit all groups, but especially those currently experiencing the greatest proficiency gaps. This slide looks at math proficiency through two lenses: economic status and disability. Again, math proficiency declines for both groups as chronic absenteeism increases. However, not economically disadvantaged students consistently outperform economically disadvantaged students across every single absenteeism level. In short, these graphs make clear that chronic absenteeism hurts all students, but the impact is especially severe for students who face additional barriers, whether economic or disability related. As I wrap up, I want to leave you with a few key takeaways from today's presentation. First, the pandemic exacerbated existing challenges, and while we've seen some recovery, rates remain elevated across Georgia compared to pre-pandemic levels. Second, disparities are real but actionable. Students of color, economically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities face disproportionately high absenteeism and are more severely affected academically. Addressing these barriers efficiently helps ensure resources are targeted where they are most needed. Third, schools with higher chronic absenteeism see lower proficiency in both English language arts and mathematics. Simply put, students can't learn if they're not in school. Thus, improving attendance is a direct investment in academic performance. Finally, addressing absenteeism requires universal strategies to support all students while also implementing targeted interventions for the students and schools facing the greatest challenges. All in all, reducing chronic absenteeism is not only a matter of fairness, it's a matter of efficiency, accountability, and economic strategy. Focusing on attendance improvements ensures that every dollar spent on education produces stronger outcomes for students and more competitive workforce for Georgia. Thank you again for the opportunity to be part of this important conversation. Your commitment to addressing chronic absenteeism is not just shaping the success of Georgia's students. Today, it's strengthening the future workforce, economy, and communities for years to come. Thank you.
Great. Stay there for a second, Dr. Kim. Let the panel ask you a question too. I believe you've got that. First of all, thank you for the data. it's obvious to me with the data that you have here, attendance drives achievement. That is something we're focusing very strong on in the committee is how is this impacting or creating learning loss, and how do we curb that? How do we catch the student back up? But also one question for me would be, we're seeing a decrease since the pandemic. It's high of about 1% in Georgia each year for, I guess, 3 years. Now, do you anticipate we'll be able to continue to bring that down at least 1%?
In terms of chronic absenteeism, sir?
Uh-huh.
Yes, I believe so.
So in other words, the attention that we're giving it and the communication we're making is having some impact, decreasing it.
If I have the power to predict that, I will be sitting somewhere else. But I strongly believe that all the commitment that you have made will make a difference in the future.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. I believe you have a few questions, Senator. Still, you're on.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I was wondering, obviously, you're looking at this data from a statewide perspective. Are there hotspots where it flares up greater than others around the state? Could you talk about that? You don't have to be overly specific, but maybe just generally.
Absolutely. So we came up with a heat map that looks into the data from all the counties in the state of Georgia. There are definitely hot spots that we're seeing. My analyst and I did sit down and talk about this. Like, why do you think this county is particularly red compared to other counties? We thought about the demographic diversity. We thought about the economic status that these counties are in. However, we cannot say for sure this factor is affecting these hotspots at this point of study, but we do have a map that you can take a look at. I will make sure to share that with you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Chairman Hickman.
Just a quick statement. I think you, Senator Steele, the GOSA website, Governor's Office Student Achievement website is extremely detailed. And you can go in and you can look at each individual school in your district. You can look at your district as a whole. You can tell by race, you can tell by gender, all those factors. So I've done that in my area. It's pretty much even. It's not a racial issue. It's not a gender issue. It's pretty much the same across the board. So yeah, I would encourage everybody to look at it for their own area too.
That's precisely one of the key takeaways that I wanted to emphasize, that this chronic absenteeism is affecting pretty much all students in the state of Georgia. And I'd like to point out that Department of Education, their dashboard also has a heat map of chronic absenteeism, if you would like to take a look at. Mhm.
Great presentation. And Dr. Kim, Dr. Nundor, thank you very much for the information. I've had some conversations with MJ before, so proud of the data you provide.
All right, next we'll hear from Chrissy Doyle from Georgia Apex.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Chairman Kennedy and Chairman Irwin for inviting us to be here today and the rest of the committee. I will be co-presenting today with my colleague Dimple Desai, Senior Policy Analyst for Voices for Georgia's Children, and Ms. Desai will kick us off. So, Dimple.
Thank you so much to the members of both committees for your raising this very important topic. My name is Dimple Desai, and I'm a social worker and a behavioral health researcher. But most importantly, I'm a mom of 3. I've got 1 in college and 2 in high school, and this topic is very important professionally and personally. Okay. So chronic absenteeism, as we've heard from previous speakers, is absolutely not a school issue. It's a public health, workforce, and community well-being issue. When schools support the students' physical, mental, and emotional health, they are helping to remove barriers to learning and reducing chronic absenteeism. Three things that I really want to help to elevate during my time with you today are school-based health centers, school-based behavioral health programs, and school social workers. Georgia has about 129 operational school-based health centers in Georgia, which are pretty geographically throughout the state. And they provide chronic management, preventive services, and behavioral health care and referrals for basic needs. They are really doing some critical work in our schools to ensure that not only are the kids getting the health, their health needs met, but also acknowledging some of the vital conditions that must be met as well. And research does indicate both nationally and even in our state that students with school-based access to care miss fewer days and stay more engaged in learning. So school-based health centers are absolutely part of this puzzle that help to reduce health-related absence and strengthen the family and school connection. School-based behavioral health programs, of course, Georgia Apex being our largest. I won't go into too much detail here. Dr. Doyle's going to dive much further, but we've got over 800 schools implementing Georgia Apex across our state and roughly providing about 14 to 16,000 unique students the care that they need in a place that they're already spending so much time. They are, of course, also able to reduce stigma, normalize help-seeking behaviors, and really ensure that students are able to get quicker access to care. They are operating off of 3 tiers. So if you can imagine a pyramid, you have the bottom rung of the pyramid, of course, being tier 1, which is that universal prevention. This is something that we're going to do for every student in the building, and this is where we're going to see the most gain in school climate. If we are talking about school climate being an important and necessary presence of combating chronic absenteeism, and that this is where those efforts are going to be placed. And so having an APEX program in a school absolutely puts the therapist right there to be able to partner with other school support professionals to deliver that tier 1. Tier 2, of course, is promoting mental health awareness among youth and families. And you can think about this as group work, something skill building. And then, of course, the very top tier, the intensive one-on-one treatment. And that's going to be delivered just to a select few that really need it. And again, having the access to that in a school building, of course, is acknowledging many of the barriers to care that we know exist. Additionally, if you are prioritizing some of the tier 1 interventions, again, this is where you really have the ability to get very community specific. And by community, I mean school specific. A lot of the data that Dr. Kim was presenting, this is where you have an opportunity to really zone in on interventions that might be specifically meeting the needs of that particular student body. Here is where you can get a lot more creative in terms of implementing evidence-informed interventions, because as you go up the tier, you absolutely need to get more evidence-based, as well as the number of workforce that can support that decreases as well. Tier 1 is something that with a little bit of capacity building, almost anyone connected to the school can provide. So expanding Georgia's school-based programs such as the Georgia Apex program is also a really strategic piece of the puzzle in terms of reducing chronic absenteeism. And of course, I absolutely want to lift up the school social workers. The school social work workforce is integral, and really this is the position that can support across all 3 tiers. And so they're that critical link between students, families, and communities. They are able to address something at that tier 1 level, again, kind of general education around absenteeism and the impacts, but then they're also able to do some targeted intervention with maybe some identified students that are really struggling with that. So because of this linkage, they are a really critical workforce. They can also, of course, again, address the root causes: housing instability, family stress, food insecurity, and behavioral health needs. They're kind of doing all of it. Benefits to including them in your interventions and uplifting this workforce, again, is for early identification, crisis intervention, and then family engagement as well. So expanding Georgia's school workforce is one of the most direct strategies really to reducing chronic absenteeism. Something else that I just wanted to mention too is just a little note on the delivery systems. We really have quite a diverse delivery system for behavioral health in Georgia and physical health. And so Georgia uses multiple systems to deliver this. We have community service boards, federally qualified health centers, and certified community behavioral health clinics, But by addressing the students' and families' needs, these places of delivery, these systems for delivery really are being responsive to crisis response, preventive care, and coordinated supports. These providers are helping to reduce barriers that drive chronic absenteeism and keep students engaged in schools. So in summary, given kind of what I've elevated in terms of chronic absenteeism, want to leave you behind with some recommendations. We, of course, want to increase funding for school social workers. Again, this being a really critical workforce that is helping to acknowledge the things that are necessary to reduce it. Number two, continue to expand and fund the Georgia Apex program, including telebehavioral health. We know that telebehavioral health is helping to increase access to parts of our state where we might not have the in-person workforce to provide service delivery. Continue to innovate and modernize Georgia's licensure processes, pathways specifically for health clinicians. Expanding the funding for Tier 1 services, including evidence-based or informed school-based health and school-based behavioral health programming. Again, that Tier 1 support being something delivered to everyone in the building and helping to contribute to positive school climate as well. Thank you very much.
Dimple. Hello again. I'm Christy Doyle. I'm the Senior Director of the Office of Children, Young Adults, and Families for the Office of Behavioral Health, Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. I would like to speak briefly with you today about the Apex School-Based Mental Health Services. As has been so eloquently discussed today, absenteeism is a challenge for our children and our state. We at DBHDD believes that Apex is a part of the solution to that problem, in part through achieving the goals of Apex, which include providing care where the children are. We don't require the children to come to the supports and services they need. We are in the schools, in the communities to assure that the children have maximum access to the services and supports that they require to be successful and remain in school. In addition, being present in the schools helps clinicians and educators identify student needs early and begin to address those needs earlier before absenteeism becomes a problem or when absenteeism is beginning to emerge as a problem. And finally, it allows the door to open to care in ways that might not be accessible to a child or to a family if the care was not so readily available to the child at the time they were identified and the need was addressed. A quick overview of Apex in the state of Georgia. We are celebrating our 10th continuous year of service this year. And Ms. Desai had the number of 808 schools. The numbers that I have for you, she actually does not have available yet. These are from the draft annual report from year 10 and are literally hot off the presses. We are currently in almost 870 schools in the state of Georgia. And last year, so the school year 2024 to 2025, Apex provided over 250,000 services to students in Georgia schools. In addition, we reached over 15,000 students, unique students throughout the state of Georgia. In the math, as you look, you will see that the darker color indicates more Apex schools and the lighter color indicates fewer. I'd really like to highlight for you today the collaborative nature of the Apex program. It is not simply DBHDD writing a check or a provider sitting down and providing a service. Rather, Apex is a partnership between DBHDD, clinical providers, schools, and our support partners at the Center of Excellence at the Georgia Health Policy Center at Georgia State University. So while DBHDD provides funding and support to providers and also to schools, providers bring the services into the school and also feed information back to the Center of Excellence to allow for data monitoring and fidelity reviews to assure that the services that are being delivered are quality services, not just beans to count. Schools partner with the provider and with DBHDD to assure that student needs are getting met, that services that are being provided are meeting the unique needs of the school and the community. And the schools also are providing information back to the Center of Excellence to allow for data tracking and monitoring. Meanwhile, the Center of Excellence crunches those numbers for us, if you will, but also partners with DBHDD to provide training and technical assistance to schools and providers to assure that interventions, modalities, and services are meeting the needs and that information is available to enhance service provision when needed. All of this serves the primary program goals of Apex, which, as we've discussed, are timely and early as possible detection, access for children, and coordination of care among all of the adults responsible for meeting a child's needs. Some additional statistics from the 24-25 school year. We were able to serve 7,243 students for the first time through Apex. So these are students who had not received any mental health services prior to initiating their Apex services in their school. In addition, there were almost 12,500 referrals made statewide to Apex services. Parental satisfaction is also pretty significant with Apex, with 71% of parents reporting that they felt their children were better able to handle their daily life after initiating Apex services. In addition, 83% of the parents who responded indicated that they felt having Apex available has improved their child's access to care. Ms. Desai talked through the Apex tiers, and here I'd like to provide for you a visual representation. And the best way to talk through the tiered system, if you will, and I think we've all heard this statistical model applied to many different situations, right? That 80% of your kids are probably going to do just fine with supports as usual, provided you have put usual supports in place. So 80%, or that tier 1, are those things that are accessible to all of the children in the school. Those things that enhance school culture, school climate, general education, those sorts of resources. Early intervention is that tier 2, and that's going to be maybe 10, 15% of the children. That might be a little bit more. So there'll be a smaller group of kids that might be a group intervention of some sort of school skill education, or some other sort of more targeted, tailored intervention for a group with a specific need. And then finally, the top tier, tier 3, are those students who will benefit from the most intensive resources, such as individual therapy, family therapy, etc. Finally, I would like to address the senator mentioned from Southwest Georgia mentioned earlier the struggles of rural Georgia. And we all know and have been talking in many contexts that workforce is a challenge for behavioral health and healthcare in general, not just in our state, but around the country. In Apex, we face those same struggles, with 72% of the clinical providers reporting turnover and difficulty recruiting and maintaining clinicians for a variety of reasons. The top three of these include salary, workload, and just other opportunities because they're in high demand. As part of our efforts to address these challenges, DBHDD was able to partner with the Center of Excellence on a small grant-funded pilot that provided a supported internship for master's level clinical students. We provided a supplement that paid for tuition for the second year of a clinical program in exchange for a commitment to work for Apex. That was a small 2-county pilot for proof of concept, and it was very effective. Because of this, we are moving forward with standing up a larger pilot. We will be offering supported internships to 20 students with a focus on universities serving rural and underserved parts of the state in order to help Apex providers and students connect. And in exchange for the supported internship, we are asking a 2-year commitment to work for an Apex provider post-graduation. So stand by. We are standing that up, and we will bring results to you as they come in. May Ms. Desai and I answer any questions for you today?
Thank you for the presentation. Do we have any questions from the panel? Oh, yes, sir. Chairman.
Why do no schools, why do some school districts not invite Apex in at all? Why do some only have 50%? And then you got others that are fully involved with Apex. Why is that? Why aren't these schools asking y'all to come in?
Senator, that's a simple answer or question with a complicated answer, but I can give you a few pieces. One is that Apex is one form of school-based mental health, and it is the most broadly distributed, but there are some school systems that have local partnerships, so they may have mental health services in their school, but not Apex. In other situations, that may be a decision of the local superintendent, and the superintendents do get to decide whether or not they wish to have Apex services in their school. In other situations, it may be that there is not a clinical partner in the community. That is something that DBHDD is continually trying to address with relationship building and trying to recruit new providers. We are hoping that the supported internship might play a role in that as well. If we can offer a provider a pipeline, if you will, of workforce. We are hoping that some in underserved areas that have been unwilling or unable to engage may be willing to give Apex a try. There are many factors.
So how does a school district decide, looking at this graph, that 50% of them, like my county, Bullock County, looks like it's about 50% Apex and non-Apex. How do they decide which schools go in and which schools not?
That's a very local decision, sir. I mean, the superintendents will analyze their schools, determine where the need is greatest, where they're going to get the most impact for their Apex services.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you
Thank
very much, Ms. Doyle and Ms. Desai. Thank you for the presentations. Those were great. Chairman?
All right, I'm going to give gold stars to all those. We are moving along quite well. So thank y'all for the presentation so far. Darlene Lynch, I believe I saw you sitting out. You're already up there, Darlene. You moved on me. We'll turn the podium over to you.
Screen. That's what we're in language. You go.
You would please get up and run and introduce yourself with Appleseed, and then the floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Irwin, Chairman Kennedy, and members of the committee. My name's Darlene Lynch, and I'm the Legal and Policy Director at Georgia Appleseed. It's a pleasure to be here today to be a part of this conversation on chronic absenteeism. Did you want to? Clicker? Okay. Georgia Appleseed is a nonpartisan, nonprofit law center. We have worked across the state for the past 20 years to help students graduate and get on a path to success here in Georgia. We have a unique program of direct services where we work with families from every corner of the state who are facing exclusionary discipline, meaning they'll be removed from school for discipline matters. And we see about 200, 250 cases every year of suspensions, expulsions, enrollment denials. And I just learned from our executive director, Michael Waller, who's in the room, that last year we saved children 17,000 missed days of school by coming to more reasonable resolutions on discipline. We appreciate your efforts and we welcome the opportunity to share some insights from our work. The first thing I want to talk about are the school attendance and school climate committees, and I thank Chief Judge Harris for her presentation. Georgia Appleseed has been a part of this effort since at least 2018, when the student attendance committees did not include school climate. And Georgia Appleseed worked with partners, including Judge Key and Dr. McGibney, to include school climate because we recognized how important the climate of the school is to attendance at the school. So that began in 2018. After that, we've conducted a number of surveys of judicial circuits and counties to see how many knew about the committees and how many had started a committee, and the results were actually quite dismal. In 2023, there were very few, and as Judge Harris pointed out, there's 16 out of 51 judicial circuits that now have them. So one of the things we've been doing is trying to raise awareness through conferences and through our statewide coalitions, and also provide assistance. So Judge Harris spoke about people calling her. People are also calling us to learn about how do I create one of these committees. So you can see here that we've created our own sort of repository of information on how to create a committee, including how SB 123 changed the rules of the game a little bit. We think that having a centralized source of information would be very helpful. We try to do our best here. We have sample protocols on our page, including the protocol from Cobb County, which is one of the best. One of the issues we see is there isn't currently anyone working on getting that training out, getting those resources out. There are competing committees with similar members. So this is what we are trying to do to improve. And I have to say that we find that the committees are very successful at what they do when they really work hard and are able to convene all the different stakeholders. So we have some recommendations at the end of the presentation for ways to improve this further. Chronic absenteeism. So as I mentioned, we work statewide. We travel around the state and we look at the regional impacts of absenteeism, of discipline, of climate, of access to school-based behavioral health. This summer, since the passage of an enactment of 123 and of House Bill 268, we've been to Macon and Augusta. And we also, as I mentioned, are starting to see cases since the start of the school year from all parts of the state. One of the things that we're concerned about is the linkage between poor school climate and exclusionary discipline and how that contributes to chronic absenteeism. 13% of Georgia schools have the lowest possible school climate rating. More than 1 in 10 of our schools have a 1 or 2-star climate rating. That means that students, staff, parents do not feel comfortable in that school. And In House Bill 268, we were really delighted that there was a provision that called for interventions for schools with a 1 or 2 star rating, but there was no funding for that. And so we're going to try our best to work with stakeholders to address the climate in this 13% of Georgia schools. We also saw after the school shooting in Winder last year, an increase in what we call zero tolerance policies around discipline. And so we saw a lot of long-term suspensions and expulsions for what we might consider a minor infraction or activity due to a disability. So this year, we're still seeing some of that. We saw, for instance, a child who had a vape. A lot of our cases involve vapes right now, being suspended for 3 semesters. So they may go to alternative school, but that's 3 semesters out of school. Another child who was being bullied and pushed back, and this is, under the age of 13, was suspended for the rest of their middle school career. So we're still seeing that, and that creates, obviously the child is out of school, but also creates a harsh climate at the school where children don't feel they're going to be treated fairly, and that can contribute to absenteeism. As we go around the state, we see that OSS, or out of school suspension rates, have come down to about 6.9% statewide, but there's still pockets of really high, like more than double that rate. So we're concerned about out-of-school suspensions and expulsions. And then I won't repeat what Dr. Doyle and Desai shared, but there's still, while we're doing better on behavioral health access in schools, it's still very limited. And as Chairman Hickman pointed out, it's spotty in certain areas. So there's still more work to be done to expand APEX and other forms of school-based behavioral health, including telehealth, which would help quite a bit. Here's what we're seeing this year in particular since school started: enrollment denials and disputes. This is a problem that we think has been exacerbated by HB 268, unfortunately. Schools around the state are demanding a really wide range of records and evaluations before they'll admit a child to school. So we had a parent with a first grader who was denied enrollment until the parent got a psychological evaluation and a risk assessment of some sort. We're hearing a lot of stories of schools asking for child abuse records and all sorts of legal records and medical records that are potentially protected by other laws. And those enrollment delays are causing kids to be out of school for sometimes weeks while they're dealing with the denial and the dispute. Again, we're seeing out-of-school suspensions. Last year, according to GOSA's website, there were 134,000 students suspended. So any child who's suspended for 10 or more days gets a tribunal. In our experience, and we've been doing this for many years, the wait just to get to the tribunal is 18 days. So these children are already chronically absent before they've been found that they have actually committed any kind of violation, just while they're waiting for their tribunal. Most of the suspensions that we see the schools asking for, the lowest is usually a full semester and up to a year, and as I said, more than that. Most of these, according to our review of our data, and of the Georgia Department of Education data, I would say about 60% are for minor infractions, things considered a 1 or 2 on the severity scale. And so we're seeing a lot of kids missing a lot of days for relatively minor infractions, or also we see a lot of kids with disabilities being suspended. A couple of other things we see: pickups. These are kind of a sneaky thing. Sometimes staff or teachers will tell the parent to just come and pick up their kid. So that doesn't count often as an absence, but they are absent and they could be asked to pick up their child every day for a couple of weeks. We're also very much aware of transportation barriers. So one thing to add on to this discussion of discipline, The more we see increased use of out-of-school suspension, the more we see kids in alternative schools, and we don't provide transportation in alternative schools. So we see a lot of children and parents who just can't get their kids to school when they've been assigned to an alternative school. We're also seeing a really impressive increase in kids who are homeless or have housing instability. Last year it was 41,000. This year it's 46,000 children. They also have transportation issues. The last two things I'll highlight is we believe there's a lack of clarity under what remote learning is under HB 268. And so some schools are assigning children to remote learning, but we don't know if that means they're really learning or if they're just at home. And finally, absenteeism itself can still be a factor in expelling a child, even if it can't be the only factor. We've talked about most of this, so I'm going to not go into it too much, but we know about learning loss. We know that absenteeism results in lower graduation rates. Our data shows that a suspension of 10 days or more can cut chances of graduation to 52%. We had 21,000 high school students drop out last year. We have also done our own study with Georgia State scientists and academics that prove that the impact of not graduating is quite strong, not only on the students who grow up to live significantly less longer, earn about $500,000 less over their lifetime, more likely to be involved in the criminal system, but again, a negative impact on Georgia's economy. And we can share those numbers that we've crunched with GSU if you'd like those numbers. So finally, these are our recommendations. We have 8 of them. We would like that the student attendance and school climate committees have some dedicated funding to the Council of Juvenile Court Judges or another central body that can really raise awareness and drive technical assistance. School climate, we need to invest in those 1- and 2-star schools, those hundreds of schools out there that need to improve, and that requires greater support for RESAs. We're hearing when we go around the state that RESAs are feeling pretty overwhelmed. Discipline, again, let's just keep encouraging evidence-based practices that keep kids in schools, multi-tiered systems of support, positive behavioral interventions, the behavioral threat assessment. Maybe there are ways to incentivize some of these so that schools don't feel they need to just remove a child. Absenteeism, we'd like it to have never be a reason for exclusionary discipline. So that would be a tweak to the statute. Continuing to support in APEX and improving ratios of school support personnel, still well below national guidance, and this would include counselors, nurses, social workers, so forth. Transportation, I know, is a big issue. Alternative schools, we'd love to see a study committee on alternative schools as we see more and more of our kids attending those schools with different barriers. And then finally, taking another look at HB 268 to clarify the record sharing and remote learning provisions in that bill. And that's all I have.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Stay up there just for a second. Let me look around. Senator Sims, is that your will cut? We're just going to have to listen to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you said everything that was needed. Plenty of wraparound services that are already being funded and used in our schools. But the root cause, we go back to what the judge said this morning, she gave 10 barriers. Half of those barriers, what our chairman said, Senator Hickman, the classroom, the school climate. How does a child feel when they walk into the school every day? How does the parent feel when they're there? That's where we need to really start. Those are problems that need to be addressed with the leadership in the building, with the leadership at the superintendent level. What kind of people do we have running our schools today? And I, my schools, sometimes I really want to try about the issues that are going on that have nothing to do with it. Guys, one, except what's happening right there in that building, the areas that are keeping our children from graduation. And alternative school education, definitely. We have a lot of about that report to be. Alternative education, the state is paying for it or not. And our children are not receiving a good education. It just helps graduation rate. They still can't read, they still can't get a job. There's a lot.
That's right. And as I said, thank you. We're seeing a lot of students going down that path for a first offense or a very minor infraction.
I believe you have one more question here, Representative Glaze.
To go back to this clarify, with the accepted, school suspension rate, and then the side rules, where is your recommendation for us to try to restrict zero tolerance, how to improve that? Can we go back to this year a little bit more and a little more light on that? And then, especially in the area of minor infraction, so I'm going to say, I do think.
Seeing a lot of vaping and first offenses with kids being kicked out of school for them. We don't see a lot of detention anymore. I don't know what happened to that, or progressive discipline. A few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, Georgia Appleseed was very much involved in educating schools about positive behavioral interventions. And sometimes today people think it just means giving out trinkets. It's not what it means. It means having a fair approach, listening to the child, not being sort of reactionary. What we find in our services is just by coaching the parent or showing up ourselves, we have a much more reasonable conversation about what is an appropriate punishment. But if nobody's in the room, these children get very, very high punishments. So I think, we could share more data on that, including more data pulled from our own caseload. But really, for most of the time, we feel glad when we reduce a suspension to the semester, to the end of the semester. If we get less than that, we're delighted. And so we need to retrain and get the schools interested in positive interventions again.
And one more, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Lynch, one quick question. You said we need to study alternative schools, and Senator Sims alluded to that as well. I suspect you could talk a lot about that, and you have kept us on time, but just if you could tell us succinctly, what is it you have in mind specifically that needs to be studied?
Well, I think that we're seeing, for instance, a lot of kids going to alternative school. We don't know, actually, I don't know right now how many kids that is. We are in the midst of, we use a lot of pro bono legal work. We're in the midst of hiring a pro bono attorney firm to look at this in detail. But we know, for instance, that when they go to alternative schools, many of those schools are less, the environments are more challenging than in the original school. They may have students who have developmental disabilities, students with mental health issues, students with behavioral problems, students who, have all different backgrounds and they're all mixed together. So that could be a challenge. But one of the real challenges we see often, including with children in foster care, is there's no transportation. And so if a parent or the foster parent can't get off work or can't bring the child to school, then the child may not go to school, or if it's a foster child, they may need to change their placement. I also want to say that some of the alternative schools, I think, may be very, very good. We've seen some that had higher ratings than the public school, but for the most part, we have a lot of questions about how they operate.
Thank you.
Turn it over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Lynch, thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Melanie Bales and Lynn Meadows, School Nursing Association. Thank you for being with us. As soon as you're ready, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am co-presenting with my colleague Lynn Meadows, who is our data coordinator for the Georgia Association of School Nurses. My name is Melanie Bales. I am the state director for the Georgia Association of School Nurses. I represent Georgia on the board of directors for the National Association of School Nurses. So we are here today to share with you our ask. And it is to look at a little more detail about the role of the school nurse in addressing student absenteeism. So these are just the topics that we'll discuss: the importance of regular school attendance, which we've heard today, how widespread absenteeism is actually a problem nationwide, not just in Georgia, but it's far higher than it used to be, especially since the pandemic. Chronic absenteeism is now more than 50% higher, actually. And there are about 48 million public school students, K through 12. That's almost 1 in 4 of them, or 11 million students who are missing a lot of school. And so this is, of course, nationwide. So the purpose is, again, to address the school nurse's role in addressing absenteeism. Georgia's data has been presented earlier today, so I won't necessarily go into a lot of detail about that, but I'm just bringing it home about the role of the school nurse. And so when we think about student absenteeism, we talk about referring to more than just those occasional sick days. Chronic absenteeism is typically defined as missing 10% or more of the school year. And so that's about 18 days in most school districts. Students miss school for a variety of reasons. And so the occasional absenteeism are things that may impact them, such as acute illness, which would be flu, chronic conditions like asthma or diabetes, and then, of course, mental health challenges such as anxiety or depression, and even family responsibilities or unstable housing, as well as lack of health care. We are able to create more targeted, when we are able, to create more targeted interventions when we understand the root causes of student absenteeism. And so this is where the school nurse becomes critical. Absenteeism actually has a significant impact on students. And so when we look at the various areas, academically, students fall behind in their coursework, and it becomes harder to catch up because they are missing school. Socially and emotionally, they miss out on peer interactions. This is crucial for their development, especially in younger children, like the little one that's in the room today. Long-term chronic absenteeism is associated with higher dropout rates and lower graduation rates. It is not just a school issue, as has been presented earlier. Long-term, it is a public health and social equity issue. The school nurse plays a vital role that goes far beyond treating bumps and bruises. Many of us can recall who our school nurse may have been as we matriculated through school. But I will tell you that as school nurses, we serve as the health advocate within the school community. This includes identifying health-related barriers to attendance, developing care plans for students with chronic conditions, and serving as a liaison between families, healthcare providers, and school staff. In the larger student support system, nurses are often the first to notice patterns that point to chronic absenteeism and can intervene before a student falls too far behind. So these are the health-related causes of absenteeism that we see as licensed nurses in our schools. Many of them stem from health issues, both physical and mental. For instance, a student with uncontrolled asthma might miss multiple days each month. Think of the lack of access to health care that was discussed previously. Students with undiagnosed or poorly managed chronic conditions often struggle silently until they fall behind or stop attending school. Students who lack the required immunizations often miss several days of school while families attempt to access resources. And so our school nurses are instrumental in preventing communicable diseases. Mental health has also become a major factor, especially since the pandemic. Students with anxiety or depression may avoid school because they feel overwhelmed or unsupported. School nurses are trained to assess these issues and connect students with appropriate care, helping to reduce avoidable absences. This next slide here actually just depicts the fact that students don't just come into the health office stating the issues that they carry, the burdens that they carry. And so there are many opportunities for a licensed school nurse to help students at risk, students who are sad, students who are hungry, students who are abused, students who are homeless, students who are dealing with other issues such as bullying or other illnesses, students who are having those challenges that would not normally allow them to access school. And so how do we as licensed nurses identify students who are at risk? We use a combination of health office visits, attendance records, and communication with staff and families to identify at-risk students. We actually look for patterns, frequent visits to the school nurse's office, recurring complaints, and sometimes these are just simple as a stomach ache or headache. And it's not always when it's the fourth period math class, but sometimes it is. And that starts to become a pattern for many students. Consistent late arrivals to school and even absences. So by building relationships with students and families, we often uncover underlying health or social issues that may not be obvious to their teachers or their administrators. Early identification is key to preventing chronic absenteeism. Once we've identified the students at risk, we implement tailored evidence-based strategies. And these might include things such as providing health education sessions on hygiene, nutrition, and disease prevention, creating individualized healthcare plans for students, coordinating care and case management through building supportive relationships with students and families, coordinating with primary care physicians and community health resources to promote consistent attendance and care, as well as administering medications during the school day. We also run school-wide programs like immunization clinics or asthma management classes. These efforts not only support individual students, but help prevent illness and absenteeism across the entire school community. And so at this point, my colleague will discuss the collaboration and communication as school nurses and how we perform our roles in helping to support our students.
Welcome.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon now. We were gonna toggle back and forth, but as you can hear, true to a school nurse, I'm a little under the weather. Feel just fine, and I'm not contagious. So if you can't hear me or understand me, Melanie can continue the presentation. Can you all understand me, or is it too bad? Okay. So as Melanie discussed, a role of our school nurses. Collaboration is obviously essential, and you've heard that. Thank you so much. You've heard that throughout the morning with other presenters talking about collaboration. Thank you so much. School nurses certainly don't work in isolation. We never have. we're part of a broader student support team. We partner with teachers, of course, to monitor students' well-being. We work with counselors and our school social workers and school psychologists to address emotional and behavioral concerns and coordinate with community healthcare providers. We also work with families, obviously. Families are key in this process. We have the school nurses, we're trained to have open, non-judgmental communication, which helps us to understand and sometimes get to the root of challenges that families are struggling with and to help guide them toward resources. We know when schools, families, and healthcare systems work together, students are more likely to stay in school and stay healthy. Thank you. However, we do face some barriers and challenges. Some of our barriers and challenges include these 4 top things. Limited nursing staff. Many schools only have one school nurse who covers multiple schools. So you can have a school nurse who kind of works as a case manager, like in the hospital. So she will have multiple schools. And then we have some areas specifically, not just, we think that in the rural area, it only happens where you have one school nurse covering multiple schools. That also happens in any of our areas, in many of our areas, I should say it that way. This obviously creates a significant strain, especially when managing students with chronic conditions, those who need medication needs, and those who obviously have emergencies. Because who's best to equip to respond to an emergency? A licensed school nurse. Also, lack of resources or funding. Many times our budgets for school health services are often limited. Of course, it's competing priority with everything else that the schools have to purchase. This can impact the availability of medical supplies, updated equipment, and access to continuing education and training. Many of our school nurses, we provide our own staff development. We partner with folks like Children's Healthcare of Atlanta to provide that staff development for our school nurses. And you may be thinking, well, what supplies might you not have? Think about that student who has asthma and has limited resources. They may have a nebulizer machine at home, but if parents can't afford to have a nebulizer machine at home and at school, we still need one at school. Technology in terms of medical supplies and issues change every day, and we do our best to keep up with the most updated and frequent technology and equipment. Communication gaps with families. You've also heard this from some of the other presenters. We struggle with sometimes language barriers, lack of reliable contact information, or inconsistent parental engagement can obviously limit communication. Parents are busy. Many times they don't have time to talk to us. It could be after hours. We work on after hours. We work on the weekends. Also, privacy and consent issues. And I think someone talked about the issues with regards to FERPA and HIPAA, sharing of information, critical information. And our role is critical that we know about chronic illnesses, et cetera, but how we share that out is what we're concerned about, to make sure that we abide by the law. Here's a little just story from the field, and I'll run through this as quickly as I can. I won't need to look at the slide. I'll sum it up. Here you have, for instance, this is something typically any school nurse would face. Here we have an 18-year-old senior who started her senior year but was not coming to school. She had missed several days of school within the first 2 months of school. The school nurse and the school had called 911 6 times because she was not managing her asthma. She also seemed to be very disconnected with the school. So the school nurse worked very hard to establish very quickly a rapport with the student, which was established. In establishing that rapport with the student, the school nurse realized this is more than just her asthma concern. Why she's so disengaged with school. And as the school nurse began to establish a relationship and a rapport with her, she found out that during COVID, when she started at 9th grade, she had lost several family members to COVID. And so she was actually clinically depressed, but had never been diagnosed. So the school nurse referred her, and you've heard that from someone, to our school-based health center. The school-based health center and the nurse worked together to get her services. The school-based health center actually became her medical home. She was able to get the asthma care that she needed, as well as the asthma supplies, but it didn't just stop there. The school nurse was actually able to look at that home environment. There were other siblings in that home. There were actually 7 children in the home, and we were able to connect them with services as well. So that's just an example of something that school nurses deal with every day. That's asthma, but we deal with diabetes, sickle cell, students who have brain tumors, the whole 9 yards. So next, we'll talk about, just real quickly, some recommendations and best practices. Again, the recommendation, and I think you've heard that today as well, every school in the state of Georgia needs at least 1 licensed school nurse in every Georgia school. We need improved access to data tracking systems, and you may be asking, well, what do we mean by that? School nurses sometimes don't even know a student is absent for several days. If we had communication tools that talk to each other, we could intervene a lot quicker. We need policies and support in terms of that help from a health perspective that would impact attendance. We also know that we have to, as school nurses, follow state and federal laws and guidelines. We also, best practices that we use referrals effectively. You just heard me use the example about how we connected our students with that student with care from our school-based health center. But it's not just our school-based health center. School nurses work well beyond our schools. We partner from wherever a student's physician is, whether that's CHOA, a school, a doctor's office in the community, the health department, where it might be even health organization, the Diabetes Association, the Association of Epilepsy. We utilize our community resources. And then incorporating behavioral health support. Finally, we should work toward school policies that support the whole child. Wellness, recognizing that physical and mental health are deeply tied to academic success. And in conclusion, we just want to leave you with this thought. Licensed school nurses play an integral part in addressing chronic absenteeism. Not just Lynn Meadows is saying that, but research has shown that. Licensed school nurses play a vital role in identifying students at risk and collaborating with school teams and families to address concerns. We have a little nugget that we say in school nursing. We're far more than just giving out Band-Aids. Those days are long gone. And many kids come in our school clinics. We're the first clinician to pick up those breadcrumbs, like in my example of children who are struggling. And it just, as been said today, no one in the school climate realized that, or the school community. And for whatever reason, that student did not feel comfortable in the school climate to come forward to share that information with anybody except the school nurse. And then finally, support licensed school nurses and school health programs. Every child deserves a licensed school nurse. And I'll just end with this. Here's another little mantra of school nurses. We're the hidden healthcare system. Many kids don't have medical homes. And at the end of the day, many parents, if something is going on with a student, a parent will say, and this is notorious, it doesn't matter what school, the economic status, none of that, race, it doesn't matter. If something's going on at home and it's Monday through Friday and it's after hours, my toe hurt, I got a sore throat. The response is, go see the school nurse in the morning. So we are that hidden healthcare system, and we take pride in that because we take pride in taking care of every single Georgia child that comes through our schools every single day. And again, my apologies for my throat. It couldn't have been worse timing. Any questions for us?
Questions from the committee? Yes, sir. Chairman. Yes, sir.
Just one quick, Ms. Bales, you might have it. Are we aware of how many open school nurse positions in the state are the vacated ones that you're looking to hire somebody? I would figure you would probably have a pretty high rate in a rural system where they're having trouble getting applicants. Do you have any data like that?
Yes, I actually do. Let me share that right now. I'm going to give this back to you and pull that up. Yes, we do. So in the state of Georgia, because there is not a mandate.
Into the microphone,
Oh, sorry.
Ms. Bales, please.
In the state of Georgia, the only mandate is for, through the Georgia Board of Nursing, that an RN oversee the school health services program in a school district. Every school district determines, based on the funding that they receive from the Department of Education, what school health services looks like in their school district. And so our 2024 Georgia school nurse staffing data indicates that only 37% of schools in the state of Georgia have a full-time nurse on a daily basis, only 37%. And so we have a total of 2,243 public schools, 52 charter, 3 state schools for a total of 2,298. And there are 1,433 full-time licensed nurses, and there are 45 nurses that work less than full-time. And so only 1,478 students, or the schools, excuse me, based on our 2024 data, have a nurse accessible for those students during the school day.
Okay, follow-up question if I could, Chairman. You know, again, let's talk about vacancies. Because I would figure the closer you are to a metro area or a hospital that has the available staff that you could tap into as a school system, you might be able to entice a nurse to leave the hospital to come work in her child's school or something. Do you have any data on how many vacancies today are out there for school nurses in those 1,473 schools?
So we don't have that specific data, but I do have some anecdotes to share with you because as I am the district administrator for a large school district in Georgia, it is not enticing for nurses to leave a hospital system to come and work as a school nurse because of the compensation. So yes, they may be looking for work-life balance. They may enjoy having the summers off, but many of those nurses, because of the compensation not being very competitive, they also have to work a second or third job. And so I definitely appreciate and would love if it were, I guess, easy to attract nurses from a hospital setting. It is not, unfortunately. But we will get that data back to you about the number of vacancies that we have statewide.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Questions from the committee? Okay, ladies, thank you for that. Very
Thank you.
informative. Thanks for giving us that perspective.
Thank you so much for the
Nurse.
opportunity.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. All right, Chairman, back to you.
Okay. We're staying on time, so thank all the presenters and great information so far. We've got 3 coming up. I believe we've got Voices for Children, the After School Network, Georgia Alliance of Boys and Girls, and YMCA of Metro Atlanta. If y'all would, as we say here quite often, Chairman, is line up on the wall. And I know you felt that. If you've got your bill, by the way, we line up on the wall and we're defending our bill before rules.
We might have a little PTSD on the Senate side from hearing that, Chairman Irwin, but yes, sir.
Yeah, we're not going to ask for any bills or anything.
Hey, Polly,
Not yet,
introduce
not yet.
yourself and then we'll let you roll.
Yes, sir. I'm Polly McKinney. I'm the Advocacy Director of Voices for Georgia's Children. And I am up here really just as the opening volley for our robust out-of-school time presenters. We've got Uzma Ahar from Voices because Katie Landis had the same vocal thing that our nurse just had. so Uzma's presenting. We've got Christine Steinman and Kim Nelson who are presenting for the providers. And I know we're short on time and we've timed our stuff, so I'm going to step aside and let them go. And this is, you pushed that to advance.
The podium is yours, then.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Kennedy and Chairman Irwin and committee members. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you today a little bit about Georgia's out-of-school time programs or OST programs and how they can help combat chronic absenteeism. I'm Uzma Azhar. As Polly mentioned, I'm filling in for my boss, so if she asks, please tell her I did well. and I'm the Senior Policy Analyst at GSAN, and GSAN is a division of Voices for Georgia's Children. We are dedicated to advancing, connecting, and supporting after-school and summer learning programs across the state of Georgia so that our youth have all the opportunities they can have to thrive. So when we talk about out-of-school time programs, we are talking about after-school, summer learning, as well as weekend youth development programs. All of those times that some of our colleagues mentioned earlier that kids don't really have access to an adult that can provide them with care. In Georgia, we are currently using both federal and state funding streams to support OST programs. The 21st Century Community Learning Centers is administered by the Georgia Department of Education and provides approximately $41 million to school-based as well as community-based out-of-school time programs. The out-of-school services program is administered by DFACS and uses $15.5 million in TANF funds to serve low to moderate income communities across the state. And then thanks to the Georgia General Assembly for providing $12.5 million to support the Boost program to provide access to after-school and summer learning programs that was previously funded at $27 million through pandemic funds. When we're talking about chronic absenteeism, we believe that school districts are not the only ones that should be a part of the solution. After school and summer learning programs can play a huge part in it. These programs provide students with welcoming spaces as well as access to high quality learning experiences that tie in school day lessons, but also keep their interests in mind. This way, learning becomes a space where mistakes can be celebrated rather than a source of stress. These places also provide students with access to trusted adults who they can come to for both academic as well as non-academic challenges. Evaluations of after-school programs have shown that students report that with high participation, they do better in school. Teachers have reported higher participation and engagement in learning, and parents have said that their kids feel better about attending school and they have a positive attitude about going to school. We know that when students are engaged, they do better in school, and we know that when they do better in school, they will show up more. We can also see this in our own programs in Georgia. In Georgia's 21st Century program, about 75% of students experience increased engagement in learning, and 2/3 of students who previously attended school at 90% or below increase their attendance rates for that particular school year while participating in the program. Even beyond 21st Century programs, we've seen after school and summer programs across the state of Georgia partner with school districts. They work with school counselors and teachers to identify which students are at risk or are experiencing chronic absenteeism, and then they work with families to figure out what are those barriers, what are those challenges, things like disengagement or transportation or other personal challenges. And they work through that by providing mentoring, by providing flexible schedules, having regular contact with families to figure out what kind of wraparound supports they actually need, rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. And so with students, families and schools, after-school programs can and do play a part in reducing chronic absenteeism and setting kids up for success. When we're talking about chronic absenteeism and some of the root causes of it, like student disengagement and aversion to school, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about summer learning programs as well. Research has shown that kids that attend high-quality after-school and summer learning programs not only improve their grades and their behavior, but also their attendance rates. A lot of kids that don't have access to summer programs often fall behind, but a high-quality summer program can not only help kids avoid the summer slide, it can also help them make gains in reading and math so that they come more prepared for the next school year. And then finally, I'd just like to mention what demand for after school looks like in Georgia. Unfortunately, according to a Georgia Can report, Georgia is leading the nation in unmet demand in after school and tutoring. Of those parents that are not currently sending their kids to after school programs, 22% that said that they were very interested in sending their kid to a program. And those who did not have access to tutoring programs, 23% said that they would send their child to one if it were available to them. So while we're very thankful for the recent investments in the Boost program, there's still a huge gap in access to after-school and summer learning programs throughout the state of Georgia. And both our kids and our families really need those resources. To hear more about what programs are actually doing on the ground to combat chronic absenteeism, I am delighted to be joined by our presenters with the Georgia Alliance of Boys and Girls Club and the Georgia Alliance of YMCAs, who'll talk about all the different things that their programs are doing.
Thank you. We'll turn the podium over to you. We've got to make a switch out there.
They're all built in together.
Gotcha.
So I'm Christine Steinman. I'm with the Georgia Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs. So I'll introduce who we are first in case you don't know what the Boys and Girls Clubs is. We enable all young people, especially those who need us the most, to reach their full potential as productive, caring, responsible citizens. Last year we served 62,510 kids across the state of Georgia in more than 62 counties. We have 170 clubhouses and sites throughout the state. We operate a year-round program, which means that we serve kids after school every day, Monday through Friday, and during the summer. We also offer fall camps and spring break camps, which allows our parents and families to continue to work even during those school breaks when schools are operating, or not operating, I should say, during the school day. So you've heard a lot of data today and statistics. So I'll try not to throw a lot of numbers at you. I'll try to provide a little bit more information. You know what the challenge is. It's school absenteeism. You know what the numbers are. You know that we have a problem with it. And so we're here to explain that us as out of school time providers are here to provide a solution. So you'll hear from various providers today. There's another one in the room who's coming up after us. And we know that today 1 in 4 students are chronically absent in America. You heard some of the more local statistics earlier when Ms. Kim was up here. What we do a little bit differently at Boys and Girls Clubs is we provide a safe, supportive environment, again, year-round. We do collaborative partnerships. We partner with other agencies to provide services. We provide engaging programming. We have best practices that we do on a daily basis. We have data that proves, of course, that we do have kids who attend school on a more regular basis. And what makes us a little bit different with that is that we are building supportive relationships. Earlier, Senator Sims said, well, what are the schools doing? Are they providing an engaging environment? And the answer is that out of school time programs are doing just that. We are providing an engaging environment. We are building relationships with kids. Ms. Kim, when she was here earlier, I don't know if she's still in the room, talked about how there was a huge jump from 2020 to 2022, and we don't know what the cause of that is. There are also surveys that show that Gen Z, the generation that's currently in school, has expressed that they feel lonely, they feel isolated, they feel sad. There are surveys that have shown that 40% of kids are experiencing that they are disconnected from society. What are the ways that we can prevent that from happening? And that's building relationships with them, showing that there is someone who cares for them. And that's what we do at Boys and Girls Clubs. We build relationships with our kids. We are checking in with them on a daily basis, just like the nurses who just spoke are doing. They're building relationships with the kids and they're talking to them. They're finding out what's happening in their lives and helping to address those issues. We found in a 2024 longitudinal study that 61% of our kids didn't skip school and 70% of our teens didn't skip school. A primary reason for that is that transportation is provided to the club during the school day. They can't get to the Boys and Girls Club without that transportation. So they're more likely to go to school just so they can come to the club and see their favorite youth development professional. So if they're building a relationship with someone that they want to see that afternoon, they're going to have to go to school. So it's a really simple reason, and it seems like, well, are they really going to school for that? And in most cases they are, because they may be going home to an empty house otherwise. Attendance and engagement is something that we boast about at the Boys and Girls Club because of our year-round program. Again, they're coming to us not just during the school day, they're also coming to us during the summer, which helps to improve those learning loss outcomes. We help to keep them engaged in programs during the summer. We also take them, for the teens, on college tours. We take them to technical colleges. We also help to provide internships. We sometimes partner with local construction companies for those kids who don't necessarily want to engage in a typical academic track. They may not want to go to college. Not everybody does. So if they want to maybe take a more technical route, if they want to work on cars, if they want to learn more about construction, we help partner with those agencies and secure internships for them as well, post-college, or post-high school, excuse me. So we do offer some college and career readiness. We do also like to brag a little bit about our high school graduation rates, with our graduation rate for our teenagers at 98%. After they graduate, they do go on to secure either an internship or immediately get a job. We do have about 2% of our graduating teens who decide to do a gap year. They just don't know what they want to do. And that's okay too. At 18, who does? And you'll find that over half plan to pursue a bachelor's degree or higher. This helps boost our adult population with advanced degrees. So for our return on investment for Boys and Girls Clubs, for every dollar invested in a Boys and Girls Club, there's a $5.20 return on investment as well. So what is the out-of-school time difference? And this is more on behalf of all out-of-school time programs, not just my own, but also my colleagues at the YMCA and Big Brothers Big Sisters, who's also here in the room with us, and other after-school programs. Meta-analysis shows that 41% showed improved attendance and enrollment. We showed that participants missed 7.5 days versus their peers at 9.6 days. And that we showed that in 4 summers, there was higher attendance and less chronic absenteeism. Elementary and middle school students also showed that they missed more or less 2 extra days. So our programs are having an impact on absenteeism. The kids are missing less school when they're engaged in after-school programs because they're coming and they're building relationships. They're in a more supportive environment, and there's more family engagement as well. A lot of our programs require family engagement. We require parents to come in and participate. We're also connecting them with their local school administrators and their teachers as well. We can't do it by ourselves, though, which goes back to what Judge Harris said earlier today. It's all about partnerships. We can open the doors, but we need to partner with other agencies. We need to partner with our state legislators. We need to partner with collaborate with other agencies to be able to do this. Within our doors, we have future legislators, we have future doctors, we have future teachers, we have future construction workers. We have everything within our doors with these kids, but we can't do it without you and without everyone in this room. We need their voice, your voices, their voices, and we need to make sure that we're meeting their needs by partnering together to do so and supporting those requests from everyone in the room, really. So if we can make everyone's happen, that would be great. But after-school programs improve young people's school day attendance, which is essential for academic progress. With that, I'm going to pass it to Kim Nelson, who is right next to me here.
Great, thank you. We'll turn the podium over to you.
As he's, there we go. Thank you.
It's the right one.
And I keep on, there we go. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Kim Nelson. I am the Chief Program Officer for the Metro Atlanta YMCA and part of the YMCA of the Georgia Alliance. So I'm here representing our state. I'm thrilled to be here and just very thankful to have this opportunity to share additional information. You're going to see a common thread as we look at out-of-school time, school district, nurses, and other organizations. And I'm going to just share a little bit about what it is that we do here at the YMCA across the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia, our mission is to serve individuals, families across the state by offering programs that support youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. Across the state of Georgia, the YMCA offers programs with community outreach programs to be able to support hunger relief, out-of-school time, safety around water classes, and chronic disease support. So how are we addressing chronic absenteeism? The Y's develop strong partnerships with local schools and districts. A lot of our programs are actually at the school, so the kids just have to come straight down and the parents can pick up from our locations. But the key to supporting our families really is about joint communication. How does the school and the YMCA and other out of school time providers are able to share that communication when there's needs, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to illness and health issues, and also academics. We also implement daily attendance tracking and engagement strategies. Not only do we track that, but also too, like I shared, is that we have that day-to-day communication. If someone is not coming to our program, the school is sharing that with us. At that time, every single day, we are able to get a knowledge share of what we need to be on the lookout for, what they need to be on the lookout for, so we can really serve all of our families and know what the need is. We also provide financial assistance. It really is about meeting our families where they're at and making sure everybody has access to quality out-of-school time programming. But not only do we support our families in need, but we also support our educators by offering them either a part-time availability for their children that are at school, but also too, we give them a reduced rate to support them. We also prioritize positive relationships with students and families. We engage at events and activities in partnership with local schools, but then we also host them at the Y, and we bring in other organizations to be able to share about all the resources that are there. We partner with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, we partner with Guide, and we also partner with Wings for Kids, and then our other organizations like the Boys and Girls Club. We also provide meals, mentoring, and emotional regulation. It's important that we know we're not the experts to everything. And so we partner, like I said, with CHOA Healthcare of Atlanta and Guide. They are training our staff in mental health first aid. They're training and giving them the tools and resources to work with youth on a day-to-day basis, but then to also give them the parents the resources and the referrals to where they need to go. And then on top of that too, we provide snack at all of our programs, and the majority of our programs, we also provide dinner. And then on the weekends, we're providing them with a backpack of food to be able to support them on the weekends. And as you can see with our numbers across the state of Georgia, we have 140 programs in local schools. And we serve 150,000 community members, and we're serving 2.4 million meals. We are so thankful for the boost funding that we've had over the years, and we're so thankful for it to continue with the state. And this is going to allow us, as we talked about prior, that the needs continue. We have to adapt every single year. We have to adapt based on the communication that we're getting from school districts, we're getting from other community organizations to be able to enhance and expand our services. So just in the last boost program outcomes, we served over 12,000 K-12 students. 77% parents reporting programs have helped their children's learning and preparedness for school, with 75% youth reporting authentic engagement and satisfaction. So as we look at this, and we've all said it, partnership is key. We cannot do it alone, and it does take a village. So these are some of the ways that we are working to be able to accomplish that. Our YMCA out-of-school time programs employ certified teachers and parapros. We also provide ongoing professional development for our Y staff. And again, we adapt our trainings to make sure it is training our staff for the current needs that are at hand. In addition, we provide tutoring, homework help, and STEAM activities aligned with the school. So this speaks to the importance, again, of continued partnership and collaboration with the school district so we can support the entire family. We offer on-site programs and transportation support to Y programs. It is important to know that just like the Boys and Girls Club, we are year-round, and we build our program to support the working parent. So when you look at summertime and school breaks, we are operating from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And we do not take a break from summer to the school year. And we run our programs, after-school programs, until 6:30, sometimes 7 p.m. It's also important that we have data sharing agreements and family engagement activities. So you'll see a lot of times at the school, local schools are going to have family engagement activities. The Y and other organizations are there as well, sharing resources that are beyond just after school time. In addition to that, we are opening up our doors and inviting organizations in on one of our national days, Healthy Kids Day, where every Y in the community opens up to the community, no matter if you're a member or not, free of charge, and we share resources. You will see Children's Healthcare of Atlanta there, you'll see local hospitals, you will see DFACS there, and you will see other important organizations so we can continue to provide families with the resources they need to be successful. So to wrap up, our recommendations is Boost 2.0. Build on the state annual investment in community-based out-of-school time programs to $20 million. As I stated, we've got to continue to adapt programming to meet the current needs and challenges, and to make sure that we are enhancing and expanding services because there is a population that is not receiving childcare and important resources. We need to expand funding for school-based health and social services, support transportation and attendance initiative programs, which has got to be a collaboration with all of us within the community and school districts, increase access to mental health services, and along those lines that we need to, as out-of-school staff, have the resources to be able to identify what those are and refer them to the experts at hand and to be able to continue supporting them on a day-to-day basis. And also, school districts agree to share attendance data to make sure that we're working in collaboration on how we can solve the parents' challenges and talk through it and build trust together as one. Thank you very much.
Great group. Thank you. And I'm a firm believer. I think Chairman Hickman is too. And the Boost program is, you know, as y'all stated, we put 12 million in General Assembly in here, and our governor backed that up. Very proud of that and the efforts that y'all are making towards that Boost program. So good information. Members, we do Lydia Glaze. Let's see. You don't have microphones, so just.
Yes. You presented about your early learning program and the work that you do with students and parents and getting them ready and prepared to be students in the regular K-12 and how to boost their attention in that early learning. I think that has some merit on how we continue with those things.
Yes, absolutely. So we are one of the largest Head Start providers, and we also have early learning centers and partner with other organizations in the community. Part of our early learning program is that not only are we running just like the school year, but we are providing family engagement and we are providing healthcare services. So we have dentists that come in. We have people and individuals that are coming in and checking their vision. We are working with our families to educate them and provide resources so they know what to expect when they get their child ready for pre-K and for kindergarten as well. So there is that direct pipeline from our early learning all the way through our teen programming through 12th grade. And one of the things too is that as we look at school age, we try to learn from what early learning is happening, and they have a family engagement specialist, but we also look at what are some opportunities that maybe there's a gap missing with school age services of what we need to do for out of school time. So just like in early learning where we have somebody coming in and checking vision, during this past school year, we were able to have an organization come in and doctors come in to give kids free eye vision exams, and those that needed glasses, they were able to get a prescription and glasses for free mailed directly home to them in collaboration and partnership. Because in order for kids to read, they have to see. And there's so many families that don't realize that their children are not able to see as clearly, which means they're not going to be successful during the school day, which means then they're not going to want to go to school. There's nothing like feeling that disappointment and embarrassment of not being able to share something because you don't know that, it's not your fault, it's not wrong. But yes, early learning and that pipeline is extremely important. So thank you for that question.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, ladies, very much. Very helpful. All right, we've got our final presenter, Mr. Kwame Johnson and Pierre Gaither. Y'all can make your way up. And we're running a little bit behind schedule, but that's all right. We want to hear from you gentlemen. And as soon as you're set up, you've got the floor. Thank you.
Slide, just hitting this button.
Okay, appreciate it.
Good afternoon. We have a total of 4 presenters, but we will stay within the 15 minutes. Believe me, I appreciate
Thank you.
the opportunity, committee members, from hearing about some new innovation work we're doing at Big Brothers Big Sisters. I'm President and CEO Kwame Johnson, that is drastically increasing attendance, reducing disciplinary issues, and also reducing suspensions in a number of schools here in Atlanta Metro. Also in Macon, in a rural community, we have Betsy Werner here. Betsy Fitzgerald, who's the president and CEO of our Macon office, but now also being taught to 20 other cities in our network. You'll also hear from Pierre Gaithers, who's our COO, about impact. And also we have Ms. Chambers here, who's actually a principal in one of our schools, Lithonia Middle. And 2 of our lead mentors are here who are actually mentoring young people every day in school buildings. Our big goal here is to infuse mentorship in public education at scale. Not a small program, a very big program that can impact the masses. I struggled with attendance growing up. I struggled with getting suspended. And at the age of 17, I got sentenced to prison. In solitary confinement, I met some young men who believed in me that didn't believe in themselves. And I've committed the past 20 years of my adult life in making sure young people stay in school and keep learning. If we'd accomplish those 2 things, we'll have the best state and I think the best country. Too often as adults, we complicate things, but to me, it's that simple. Keep kids in school and keep them learning. Everybody knows about Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I'm sure we got some bigs in the room by a show of hands. Any bigs in the room? Anybody that's benefited from mentorship? We should see everybody's hand, because if you are in this room and you did not have a mentor, we need to get a sample of your blood because you're unique and we need to clone you. All of us have benefited from mentorship. We cover 27 counties here in Georgia. We have Macon here represented. We have Dalton and also Columbus, Georgia. We know mentorship works. We've been doing one-to-one for many years, supporting young people. But this new innovative program I'm excited to tell you about, called Level Up, has been game changer for our organization. This program actually came from an idea of one school principal that challenged us, that challenged me. He said, you know what, in this post-COVID world, we don't need a few mentors for our school building. We need a mentor for every kid in the school building. And that was not something we had ever done before in our network, not in Atlanta and not in our 200 offices across the country. So Ms. Crooms, the principal at H.J. Russell Middle School on the West End, said, I need to challenge you to do something different. And I learned doing this work for 20 years that the solution should come from the community. And we didn't hear from just Ms. Crooms, we heard from a number of principals like Ms. Chambers, who needed this level of scale of mentoring in this post-COVID world. So we developed this program called Level Up. We have people like Mr. Turner and Ms. Robinson who are working with kids every single day in school buildings. We are mentoring kids daily and weekly. So kids come to school and not only get academics, but they get a mentor. And just think about the challenge that young people are facing in today's post-COVID world. And we know that if something is not resolved at lunchtime, it's probably going to play out on Saturday. So we're not only changing the schools, we're changing the culture and the climate in our schools through people who've been through similar challenges young people are facing, who are from the community, who have lived experiences and are trained professional mentors working with kids every single day. So who I'm going to bring up next is Pierre Gaithers, our CEO, is going to go through some of the impact and the data that proves that this model works at scale.
Already established, Pierre Gaither, Chief Operating Officer. Our program, when we enter into a particular school, we enter in with three key employees, two mentors on hopefully that sixth grade level. And I say hopefully, and I'll explain that later. And then, of course, that of a site supervisor. Both of our lead mentors on that level are trained in restorative practices, and they are separated. The mentoring is separated by gender. So we have a male and a female mentor, encouraging and mentoring that of 50 students each. So 100 on a grade level is what we're looking for. The supervisor's job is to maintain the relationship with the specific school, but also to manage the staff in the school so that mentors are not the added responsibility to that of principals and administration. And then at our headquarters, we do have a director, an assistant director, and we have that of a floater. The floater is extremely important because it creates an opportunity to ensure that there's consistent mentoring, just in case one of our mentors are out for whatever reason. We want to make sure that the impact with the students still is sustained. Here you see some numbers. You see where it says mentorship keeps kids in school. From survey and school data, we know that our work is impacting attendance by helping to keep kids in school by connectedness and mental health. We see that 83% of our students feel increase in connectedness to school and decrease or no depressive symptoms. This is important because we've heard this throughout the day. 88% of our students had reduced or disciplined events. 89% of our students had improved or consistent emotional regulations, and then 92% of our students reported having a trusted adult in their lives. This is extremely important because our program allows teachers to teach and administrators to lead because we have folks within the school who can help deal with some of those issues that are happening day by day. Here we have some additional data in all of our schools that are partnering with our Level Up program. We have seen a major difference in chronic absenteeism. Specifically on this slide, we're showing you 3 schools that had about 27% to 58% difference across 2 school districts. That is Russell. With Russell, you see that our data is showing at 39.5% compared to 6th to 8th graders, and because we're there with all 3 levels impacting that level, which was relatively 26.6% difference in that particular school. At Young, we had a difference of 31.7%. At Lithonia, we have 2 different grade levels showing here because we wanted to make sure you could see the impact. Both were around a 57% difference. Our numbers were smaller as the average of the entire school. With that being said, we talked about Lithonia. I want to turn it over to Assistant Principal Chambers to give you more.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. DeWanda Chambers, as they said, this is my 30th year as an educator. 18 of those years were spent as an educational leader. All of my service has been in inner city schools, Broward County, Florida, DeKalb County, Lithonia Middle School. I'm headed out the door, but I feel good about that because of a program like this. I was so blessed to be the 6th grade AP in 2023-24 when we partnered with the Level Up program, Big Brothers Big Sisters. Started out with the 2 mentors and the site person. I was a little leery because Mama Chambers likes to run her hallway her way, but I was so delighted to see how well trained and ready to deal with my babies the young adults were. Also, the next year, I received 4. So I have experienced 6 of the mentors, and every single one of them highly trained, qualified, and ready to service my children. And as a result of that, they built such great relationships that my babies come to school every day. And you know, we can get them in the house in the seat. We can try to teach them and meet them where they are. So I'm so impressed. I wrote an impact letter, but I just want to share with you the last part of it. It says, "It is rare to find a program that touches so many lives so deeply. The Level Up program, Big Brothers Big Sisters, is not just an asset at the Lithonia Middle School. It is a necessity And it must stay, it must continue, because has been instrumental with getting our scholars to come to school and helping them to grow. I didn't have a big brother's big sister for me, but I made it. So I'm so happy that our students have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers. If in a different environment, I'll give you a round of standing applause for your 30 years of service, but you shared the story of Brandon and many other young people that to get to work with Ms. Turner and Ms. Robinson every single day. And now I want you to hear from Betsy, who's leading our work in Macon, which covers rural Georgia. Too often we hear about programs that are only working in the inner city, but I want you to understand this Level Up program will work in urban, suburban, and also rural. And we're testing this now with 20 other cities across the country. And Betsy is leading the work for our rural work in Macon. Let's welcome Betsy.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Betsy Fitzgerald, and as Kwame said, I serve Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Heart of Georgia, which has the largest geographic footprint in all of Georgia. We are based, our home office is in Macon, and we are celebrating our 72nd year serving children and families across Georgia. We serve a remarkably diverse region ranging from urban Bibb and Houston counties to rural areas like Twiggs, Peach, and Baldwin counties. I want to talk to you today specifically about the urgent needs and incredible potential we are seeing in our rural counties and how your support can make the difference of a lifetime for these students. There we go. Students in rural Georgia face many challenges, but access to mentoring should not be one of them. It is difficult to recruit volunteer mentors in our rural areas. Many potential mentors commute out of their counties for work and simply don't have the time or proximity to give back locally. There are also few local funding opportunities. Philanthropic foundations and large-scale donors are scarce in these communities. Our school systems are still reeling from the fiscal cliff after exhausting pandemic relief funds and are stretched thin just trying to keep teachers in the classrooms. That's why paid professional mentors are essential in rural counties. We must be able to fund consistent, high-quality mentoring where the volunteer model does work. My agency is known for trying out many different pilots to see how we can be able to serve our rural counties better. We don't have issues finding mentors necessarily in places like Houston County, but we definitely do in other areas. Today, we have started a pilot and are serving nearly 123 students in Wilkinson and Lawrence counties through professional mentoring. The needs are stark. In Lawrence County high schools, more than a third of our students had 10 or more absences last year, and 4 or more had 50 or more. In Wilkinson County, they have a similar situation, but 3 of our students lost valuable classroom time due to multiple repeated in and out of school suspensions. These are exactly the students who need consistent professional mentors the most. Our evidence-based programs and wraparound family support are helping them re-engage, but without new funding, these services will end at the end of this school year. Local schools simply do not have the resources to continue them. With support, my agency can not only sustain these programs, but also expand into other rural counties such as Twiggs, Taylor, and Macon, where the need is just as important and urgent. The research is clear. Mentoring is working. A recent study using U.S. Department of Labor data tracking Big Brothers Big Sisters Little across 3 decades confirmed the long-term impact of mentoring. Our littles are 20% more likely to attend college. They earn 15% more income between the ages of 20 to 25 than their non-mentored peers. That's a big number. Think about it. When I started my first job out of college, I definitely don't think I was being paid as high as that. They also know that mentorship closes 2/3 of the socioeconomic gap. Every public dollar invested creates economic mobility, reduces poverty, and strengthens communities. And for our rural students, where opportunities are fewer, the impact is even greater. We are asking for your support so that all Georgia students, not just those in metro areas, can benefit from proven mentoring programs. These are not nice to have extras. They are life-changing and in many cases, life-saving. Without support, programs disappear, leaving students to fall behind academically, socially, and emotionally, while overburdened schools struggle to fill the gap. Let's ensure that every child in Georgia, whether in Atlanta, Dalton, Macon, or Fort Valley, has the opportunity to be seen, supported, and set on a path towards success. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to Georgia's future.
In closing, I just ask you to think about this picture here that I look at every day, especially on tough days. What if every young person had a mentor? What kind of state could we have? What kind of country we could have? And our goals for today, our recommendations is, for one, for you to know about this model. Most people don't know about this work that we're doing at Big Brothers and Big Sisters. They think about us in one way. Two, this can work in any community. It can work in your communities. We'd love to have those conversations. And third, as Bessie mentioned, we need more support to sustain and grow this program across the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Still, have a question? Yes, sir. Your mic should be on now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you didn't ask one question at the beginning of your presentation.
Let's say that again.
You did not ask one question at the beginning of your presentation. How many littles are in the room?
Right, how many littles in the room? Oh man, listen, I know I got your vote then. Come on now, listen. And that's the only reason you're in this chair, because you're a little, right?
I was a little for 39 years. We met when I was 8 and until the day he died. Very close. And I love what y'all are doing. This is something, obviously, it's something that's not a national program, right? This is very specific in terms of the mentorship program, right? And how you're driving in on that. How do you identify schools where it's most needed, and how do you target that, and how do you roll that out?
Yes. So to answer your question, it is actually a national program now. We tested this 3 years ago here in Atlanta. We're in our year 4 now, and our national office has adopted this as a national model. So it's a new innovation in the whole Big Brothers Big Sisters network. 20 cities are doing it now. It started in Atlanta. Betsy was one of the second sites to do it in a rural community. The schools in many ways have come to us to request this service. Resources are limited, so we go where we can, afford to go to, but schools in many ways have heard about this. We started in Atlanta, moved to DeKalb, Lithonia. We're also in Clayton County and now in Macon here in the state.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the committee? Yep, got one on the end. Yes, ma'am.
This is the first one that I've heard it where we have taken the urban needs of our students and absenteeism, and we played the same case for our students in rural Georgia and our suburban. So for me, that caught my ear, and I want to see how we go about getting your mentors in any area in Georgia, and then what the training is specifically, because I heard that was really something that was really helpful, that you had well-trained mentors.
Yes, well, thank you for that question. And yes, this does work in urban, suburban, and rural. What we're really talking about here, as we know, is poverty, which is no different. The history may be different in North Georgia. It may be opioids. It may be the water boys in South Atlanta. But at the end of the day, it's poverty. And we developed a program that could work across all communities. Our lead mentors, who are right here, go through all the same training that we do in our one-to-one model, but also different things that apply to the being in the school building. These are professionally trained mentors who their daily job is to support young people in school buildings. They have classrooms there, they report there, they're integrated into the school schedule. This is not just a one-off program for 20 kids. This is for the whole 6th grade. This is for the whole 7th grade. What we didn't mention is that they loop up with their mentors. So every grade, each year they go up with them. So by the end of middle school, they've had a consistent mentor. They've been able to work with Mr. Turner for 3 years. A group of 50 boys, and what that looks like, right? So that's how it works. The training is core. We have a curriculum that's very flexible, all around social emotional learning that we implement every day. But yeah, love to explore more how it actually works, but this is embedded into the school fabric.
Any other questions? All right, great presentation. Thank you for that. Miss Betsy, nice to see you. Thanks for what you're doing back home for our home area. And thank you for your good work there. And to the two mentors, ma'am, sir, thank y'all for being here. You didn't speak, but I promise you, your presence spoke loudly. You cared enough to come down and be here to listen. And so thank you for what you did for us, and thanks for what you're doing for the kids. Yes, sir. I'm going to make a few comments and then pitch it to you, Mr. Chairman, if I may. First, I want to thank my Senate colleagues that are here, those that are here, as well as Senator Dixon, who was on the front row. He's not up here with us, but he's here working. And thank you for that. I want to thank Chairman Irwin. Thank you. You have been a pleasure to work with. I look forward to walking this road with you and your committee members for the rest of this year and next year, and fashioning whatever the policy can best be for the children. I suspect that the House members that you see before you are just like the Senate members that you see before you. Each one of them asked to be on this committee because they care about this issue. They care about the children. And so I greatly appreciate them and what they are doing. They've also come from, I think, literally the corners of the state, and they have traveled here to do that. I want to thank everyone who presented. We truly have our ears open. For someone like me, who is not a professional educator, it's especially helpful to get to hear from folks, as we would say, boots on the ground, but also the professionals. And I want to thank, I also want to thank Miss Joanne Hickman, who is here with a spouse of Chairman Hickman, lifelong educator. And I know earlier we had the speaker's wife, also an educator, and I think she had to step out a little bit earlier. But thank you. Do we have any other spouses? I get in trouble when I start calling on people. I know I do, but I didn't this time. So I got the one that I needed to. Our next meeting for the Senate side is going to be October the 16th, is when we will resume. And I appreciate everyone's attendance here. Thank you so much. Chairman Irwin, whatever your comments, and close us out, sir.
Great. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Thank you for your leadership. This has been a process, and a good process, I think, for us in the House to be able to work with the Senate as well as to work with Senator Kennedy, and discussion on what we need to listen to, where we need to focus, where we need to place our efforts and our eyes. I will agree with him that great presentations today. Thank you for the work outside of today too. I know it takes a lot to put that together, to come communicate it in a short period in time. So all of you that presented, thank you for that. But the old educator in me would say, you've got to say this. I've already texted you House members your homework. Take a look at it so that you can send me that information. Hopefully by the end of the week would be good. Put a timeline on that, as my admin over there that has done a fabulous job, Ms. Shirley, at organizing this and this notebook for us, that she will want that information so we can keep compiling it as we're going to start working on policy by our next meeting. We do not have a meeting date, members, scheduled yet. We will be polling you for that next meeting, whether it's the end of October or early November, but it'll be polled for that area. Everyone, thank you for the time, the effort. Look forward to continuing this dialogue. Good afternoon. Safe travels. Thank you.
Very nice. Yes, sir.
Senators, thank you.